All right, what's going on? Drive time, Monday afternoon, 10 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. It is cloudy and it is cold. It is November in Salt Lake City. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass. Happy Monday to you. Hope you had a great weekend. It was a chaotic weekend in the world of college and pro football. That's one of the wildest weekends I've seen in football in quite some time. We'll get to all the storylines, of course, both locally and nationally. Both BYU and Utah on the football side of things came back and had a chance at the end, but neither was able to get over the line to get it done. And now BYU needs a little help. They had everything in front of them, and now they're going to need a little help if they want to go to Dallas for the Big 12 championship game. Of course, we will talk about all the storylines pertinent to that, and of course, Utah, for the first time since, I believe, 2013, 2014, somewhere thereabouts, will not be going to a bowl game. It was a really fun college football environment, really fun college football game. Iowa State's not a bad team. It's a good team. They come into Salt Lake City and ride off into the sunset with a 31-28 win after a valiant comeback by Utah football with my guy, the Ferrari. Shout out to Luke Pittari under center. Where's that been? I know a lot of Ute fans kind of frustrated there, but we'll get to what happened over the weekend, then we'll kind of preview what's next coming up on Friday in Orlando, the happiest place on earth. Spoiler alert, it's not. It's Central Florida. You've just been to Disney World. Utah at this point is a massive underdog. They're a 9.5-point underdog. That over-under is 47.5. So, according to Vegas, Utah most likely to end the season with 8 straight losses, something that has never happened. It would be the longest losing streak in the history of Utah football. BYU, on the other hand, is a 13.5-point favorite over Houston coming up on Saturday night at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. 8:15 kick. That's going to be a cold one, of course, after Thanksgiving. And BYU needs to win, and they need help, namely either Iowa State or Arizona State to get the L. Scenes, as the kids would say, down in Tempe, as Arizona State gets that win 28-23, and BYU has now lost 2 straight football games after starting the season off at 9-0. So we'll do a lot of college football on the show today. We'll do some pro football as well. Your NFL Week 12 wraps up tonight with the Ravens and the Chargers at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. Baltimore is a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is 50.5. So Vegas expecting a lot of scoring tonight with some Monday Night Football, which, of course, as you know, we are your home of the NFL here in this little old market. So you can hear Monday Night Football right after we say goodnight at 6 o'clock here on ESPN 700. I'll be on TV with Dave Fox tonight. 2 Pelotons, 2 Emmys at 10:35 on KMYU. We call that 5 Questions with Spence. So we are very, very busy on the show today, pretty football-centric, but we will, of course, talk some basketball. The Utah Jazz beat the New York Knicks. The Knicks were the second best offense in pro basketball prior to the game matinee on Saturday. Walker Kessler rolls back into the lineup after missing 6 games and played really, really well. 121-106. That was potentially the best game I've seen them play all year long. And the Knicks, namely Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson, they could not hit a shot. Mikal Bridges couldn't hit it either. They were 17-51 from 3. Jazz went 19-34. Lowry had 5. Collin had 6. Johnny Juzang came off the bench, went 4 of 7 from 3. The Jazz really shot it well. And in a sneaky way, their offense has been a little bit better as of late. So we'll get to some NBA stuff, of course, as well on the show today, in addition to our college and pro football content with a good guest list right out of the gates. One of the best to ever do it in both college and pro football, Steve Young. Former BYU quarterback, former San Francisco 49er quarterback. I played in Steve's charity golf tournament a week ago. He's good enough to agree to join us today, even though my golf game did not reflect that I deserve it with a bad performance last week. But Steve's going to hop on the show today, excited to get to that. Tom Haberstroh, NBA Daily Assist. If you're a fan of the show, first of all, thank you. How are you? Second of all, you know Tom. Tom spent a number of years with ESPN, NBC. He now has a column for Yahoo, and he does a lot of work with the Portland Trailblazer broadcast team. We are in the midst of a historically, ridiculous season from Nikola Jokic, but not a lot of people are talking about it because he's missed some time, and Denver is potentially not as good as most people thought. But we're going to get to some Jazz and some NBA with Tom Haberstroh today on a Monday afternoon. As we are wont to do Mondays of the college football season, this is the final time we will be able to do it because Coach Witt addressed the media earlier today. He was asked about his future. He was asked about the future of Cameron Rising, said he expects Cam to make a decision in a week to 10 days about potentially coming back for an 8th year to play for the Utes. So we'll bring that to you guys coming up on this Monday at 3:30. And then Richard Smith and Dr. Chris Hill, both of them live in studio today at 4 o'clock for an entire hour. All three of us are obnoxious Northeast people, so just stay tuned to be annoyed and offended for an entire hour. We'll do some jazz. We'll do some Utes. We'll just have fun with Smitty and Dr. Hill. And then we'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program today. So Steve Young, Tom Haberstroh, let's hear from Coach Witt, Richard Smith, Dr. Chris Hill, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend, off to a good start to your work week. Happy Thanksgiving week to you. Hopefully you have some time off. And that young man, his name is Porter Larson, on a Monday afternoon. All right.
What up?
Unleash the Ferrari. Our guy actually showed something, and deja vu, man. They're going to play Luke coming up on Friday. It's their 5th quarterback. It's wild. It really is. 7 straight L's. I do think Saturday night was fun. If you can just kind of hone in on one game in a vacuum, it was a great college football game. I'm stunned that we're sitting here with a football team that's lost 7 straight.
Yeah, well, it just is kind of it encapsulates Utah's season, right? The fact that they're down to Luke Batari and now Dallin Engelman for their backup against UCF. And if they were to lose one of those or both of those guys, Kyle said he doesn't really know what they would do. Probably Wildcat with Mekhi Bernard or someone there. The original Wildcat quarterback was kind of Brant Keithy this year. They don't even have him. So, what Utah would do if it got even worse would be an interesting situation. But it does kind of reflect the season they've had, unfortunately. But it was cool to see Luke, I think, perform well on senior night. And listen, with the way the quarterback position has been played, I'll be honest with you, I would have liked to seen some more reps from Mr. Luke Batari throughout the season, especially when you were wavering, when you weren't sure if Isaac or Brandon Rose was ready to run Andy Ludwig's offense or maybe make a switch of offensive coordinator mid-season. That's tough on a kid who's never ran the system before anyway. I think, from my perspective, I know hindsight is 20/20. I would like to see a little more of Luke Batari, and hopefully we see a little glimpse of that on Friday, the short week, which is always fun.
Not going to lie, when I was watching my guy, the Ferrari, lead Utah on a comeback that nearly got it done, it made me miss the long hair. Because I'm short now.
Yeah, you buzzed it.
Hair's short. I didn't buzz it.
Well,
but I had it down.
You didn't go Britney Spears.
I had it down past the shoulders. And, when I think I told you this a couple weeks ago, my friends and I did this thing on our text thread. It's send the most COVID pic possible.
Uh-huh.
And you remember when I had
very long hair, beard. Yeah.
I had the hair past the shoulder and a beard that was just way too long. You could taste your dinner from the night before. That was mine, and it's not a good look.
I don't mind it, but hey, I do want to go back to something. You kind of glanced past it very quickly. Your performance at the Steve Young golf tournament. You went real quick by that certain topic.
We'll get to that later. Let me just say this, okay? It was a scramble. It was a 4-man scramble. And maybe I'll just give Steve some credit. No, I can't do that because I'd throw the guys under the bus. He put my brother and I with potentially the 2 worst golfers in the entire group. And my brother Nate is a busy guy. He doesn't play a lot of golf. I'll just tell you this. We had 4 birdies. I had 3 of them.
Oh, but you didn't play terrible.
I wasn't great, and our group wasn't great either. But I'll go into more detail later because we have housekeeping to do. Sound good?
That's fair.
Steve Young will be our first guest today. But before we get to Steve, courtesy of our friends at Standard Restaurant Supply, your tailgate headquarters, check them out online or their convenient location in downtown Salt Lake City. It's time now for your opening tip. All right. So as we've already discussed, a absolute chaotic week of college and pro football, quite frankly, where a lot of teams, both in the Big 12 and throughout the course of college football, had everything in front of them. I don't love the term like control your own destiny. Like how many times have you heard that over the past 24 hours? But certainly Brigham Young in Colorado, which was the game that I was kind of sneaky cheering for. I just think that would be super entertaining to see a local team go up against Dion on such a big stage. Both BYU and Colorado had everything to play for, and potentially, as they say, control their own destiny, and both just fell flat on their face. Is it possible that Kansas is the best team in the Big 12 right now? Is anybody good? Is anybody bad? Nothing makes sense with this fluky conference, man, this hokey conference. Colorado goes to Kansas, and they essentially get their doors blown off. They were down big. I think it was 17-0. They did mount a comeback because they started force-feeding Travis Hunter, who is so insanely good. That kid should and probably will win the Heisman. But Kansas takes that game 37-21, and Colorado is still alive. There are actually 8 teams that are technically still alive in the Big 12, and, of course, BYU was one of them. So BYU goes down to Tempe. And, by the way, let me just say this. My sincere wish this holiday season for all of my listeners is that you find something that you're as passionate about as BYU fans are as passionate about calling out the behavior of other fan bases. Win or lose, man, that's all we get. Videos over the course of like 72 hours, like, oh, look at this guy. Can you believe what this fan did? Bad look for the ASU security. Probably should have been a little bit more on top of it. And I do want to give the BYU coaches and players a lot of credit for not cold cocking one of those little frat boys that ran up on them and tried to get chesty. Like, well done, gentlemen. When I'm watching the ASU fans rush the field, not once but twice, and trying to hone in on how many of these kids are jumping up in the faces of BYU players and coaches, I'm expecting somebody to get Kai Nakuad from the Miami Beach Brawl Bowl back in the day. And I'm watching for it. I'm waiting for it, hoping it didn't happen. But the BYU coaches and players showed a tremendous amount of restraint. And apparently there was beer spilled on people. I mean, this fan base gets beer poured on them wherever they're at, which I always find a little bit odd. Like, that is the go-to. Oh, they're wasted. They're pouring beer on us. Really? Like, are you sure? But anyway, I thought the players and coaches showed tremendous restraint. And ultimately, you can get mad about the final play all you want. Should it have been intentional grounding on Sam Levitt? By the way, Dallin Levitt released a video on social that appears to show his feelings for the BYU fan base, not coaches and players. And I always talk about the difference between the two on this show, and there is a mighty difference. But Sam Levitt, and by the way, what is Kenny Dillingham doing? I mean, he's obviously a bright, smart coach. He was one of my favorite interviews for Big 12 Media Day. But that was like the most cowardly way to finish a game I've ever seen. And yes, the bottom line is just to get the hell out of Dodge and get the win and move on. But they had the ball essentially near the goal line. Just go score, man. He has Sam Levitt run backwards a couple of different times, and then Sam throws the ball out of bounds. You guys have seen it by now. Essentially, that's intentional grounding. It should have been. And I thought one point of emphasis was to call, unsportsmanlike penalties on teams where the fans rush the field way too early. Like BYU, to me, probably should have had that ball a little bit closer to the end zone, maybe about the 40-yard line. But as it is, Jake rushes out of the pocket on the right side. He heaves it, but doesn't get it into the end zone. Chase catches it on like the 3-yard line, and your game is over. But ultimately, it's the start for the second straight week for BYU that you look at. They were down 21-0. They had 3 points in the first half, and then just came out gangbusters in the second and really did a great job to come back. And I actually thought they were going to do it again because we've seen it from them so many times. But it does give credence to the people who were a little bit skeptical about anointing BYU as they started their season off and continued to rack up wins. And there were a lot of fortunate moments, but ultimately, I do think this gives some credence to the people that were a little bit skeptical now that BYU has lost 2 straight games. I do think the game they're going to look back on is 13 points at home against Kansas. ASU's really good. And Dillingham's done a really, really good job. Cam Scattaboo, as we know, is a really good back. He goes for 147 and 3 touchdowns. And now BYU has to beat Houston coming up on Saturday in Provo. And they have to have either ASU or Iowa State to lose. Iowa State's at home against K-State. And ASU is on the road to finish the season with a rival with Arizona. So we'll see how it goes. We'll get to some Utah football coming up. But coming up next, Steve Young is going to join us. Before we catch up with Steve Young, we welcome in Ken from Lifestyle Men's Health on a Monday. Ken, happy Monday. How are you?
I'm doing well, Spence. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So let's start. I'll go second this time, Ken. You tell us your experience about working with Dr. Peterson at Lifestyle Men's Health.
Well, it was so good that I went in business with her, but really being at my mid-60s, dealing with erectile dysfunction for over 15 years and literally finding a solution has been huge. Then the testosterone side, I didn't realize how how underwhelmed I was, or in other words, I wasn't feeling as good as I thought I was until I started feeling better. Angela Peterson actually has that kind of saying when I started taking testosterone. And now it's just life-changing. Then you put on top of that the peptides, which is, I had somebody tell me the other day, just my skin, they go, why do you look so good? At your age, you're supposed to have wrinkles, and I don't. So that's been my experience, man.
So Ken is a man in his mid-60s, respectfully. I'm a man in my mid-40s, and what I've utilized Lifestyle Men's Health for is their testosterone replacement therapy and their vitality peptides, both very effective ways to kind of recapture the fountain of youth. Dr. Peterson calls it biohacking. So whatever age you are, I would definitely recommend checking them out. It's made a big difference for me. It's made a big difference for Ken. Ken, what's the special offer you have for listeners who call you today?
Okay, so one of the things that we're going to focus on is kind of the all-around health for men. So if you need to lose weight, and we know that there's a lot of weight loss things out there, what we've done is we put a package together because we're a lifestyle men's clinic, overall health. So we not only want to help with the ED, but we also want to help with the testosterone. We also want to help with your weight loss because inflammation, that's the biggest thing is our health. So we put together a package. We have a Black Friday special that if anyone does the ED treatments, we're going to at cost our testosterone for a year and the weight loss medication for a year at cost. And that is huge.
Wow. I did not know that was the deal. You keep up in the ante. So if you guys have waited to call, today is the day, and it is your lucky day because that's a great deal. So here's the number for Lifestyle Men's Health. It's 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203. 385-458-9203 or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thanks, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Spence. Appreciate it.
All right, Steve Young joins us coming up next right here on ESPN 700. efforting, they say in the business, to get Steve Young on the horn. He's a little tied up right now, so we might bump that to a little bit later. Excited to have Richard Smith and Dr. Chris Hill live in studio. We're going to do some NBA with Tom Haberstroh. But as we are wont to do every Monday during the college football season, in case you missed it from earlier, here is the head ball coach for the Utes, Coach Witt.
Came up short again, so disappointing. A lot of positive things in that game. Exceptionally pleased with the way the special teams played. It was the best special teams performance of the season. Made some impact plays, recovering the muffed punt return from the opponent. Set the offense up on the 17-yard line, I believe it was, and we blocked a punt for a touchdown. And so some real impact plays that occurred special teams-wise. It was good to see because we had not done much of that this year. Luke Patari, thought he came in and really provided a spark. Luke, just like last year when he was called upon in the Colorado game, I believe it was last game of the season, will be the starter this week. Isaac will not be available. And so, for a guy that started the season as the fifth string guy and really didn't have a whole lot of chance to play, just continued to keep himself ready every single week in case. And last week was the week that he got his opportunity and really did some good things. Came in and really, provided the spark for us. And so that was good to see Luke do that. And again, he'll get the opportunity this week to be the starter. Some other performances, Dadrian Zipper came in and did a nice job. We, missing a couple, two or three receivers, and so he had his opportunity and made the most of it. Had 4 catches, big catch at the beginning of the game. It was a great catch on the deep ball. Keith Olson, our right guard. Again, where I said after the press conference we're down to our fifth right guard, or fifth guard overall, and he came in and really played well. First opportunity to play as a Ute, and did some good things. So a lot of positives in the game, but again, weren't able to get the win. And now we got Central Florida on the road Friday, so a little bit of a short week. So today we'll be back on the field and practicing as if it was a Tuesday and proceed through our paces during the week. Central Florida, really potent on offense, leading the conference offensively, running the ball exceptionally well, as is the case with any Gus Malzahn team. You're gonna have a strong run game. They're running it for over 250 a week, and another couple hundred throwing the ball, so just over 450 a week of total low, scoring points, good on third down, good in the red zone. So it'll be a challenge for our defense this week to face that, particularly that rushing attack. So questions?
I got Justin's question.
Are you the spokesperson? Okay.
Yeah, it's a two-parter.
Two-parter today. Wow.
It would seem that the old Pac-12 schools, not just Utah, have had a difficult time adjusting to the Big 12 conference. Do you have any thoughts as to why this is? Also, and we all have this question, any thoughts about completing your 21st year with the University of Utah?
Okay. Well, it's my 20th year. Are you talking about next year? Oh, next year. Okay. Okay, let's see. First part, Pac-12. Well, Colorado's having no problem adjusting, as Arizona State isn't either. They're both seem to be faring very well. In fact, I believe they're 2 of the 4 teams that still have possibilities to play in the championship game, if I got that right. You okay? Then there's us, who obviously have our own struggles. Who am I missing? Who else? Arizona is pretty much where we are, I guess, in the for the year, and so don't have a good answer for it. Football's cyclical in a lot of ways, and you just got to do the best you can. But I know that, like I said, those 2, Colorado and Arizona State, seemingly making a very strong transition. Second part, my 21st year, I will, obviously evaluate after the season's over, see what the situation is, but my decision will be made on what's best for the program, not what's best for me. So it'll be completely determined on how I feel this program is best served going forward. And that's where that is. Okay.
Kyle, kind of piggybacking off of that decision, you have an offensive coordinator hire that you have to make. You have a transfer class that I'm sure you're thinking about. Will you make that decision after all of those moves are done?
Can't tell you for sure. It's just, like I said, after the final game's finished, Friday, 4 days from now, 5 days from now, sit down and evaluate everything. I can tell you right now that Coach Scally will be involved in decisions going forward because it's only right that he does that because he's the coach in waiting, and when that time comes, we need to make sure that he's had input on big decisions, and so it'll be a team effort in that respect going forward as far as hiring and recruiting and that type of thing.
Given the quarterback situation, how much of a priority is it to get a starter level quarterback out of the portal?
Yeah, well, we gotta solve our quarterback problems. I can tell you that, and that has been a difficult thing this year, and we're now in our 5th QB, and we got one left after that. We have 6 total in the program, so Dallin Engelman will be backing up Luke Matari in this game, and that's all she wrote. After those two, I don't have a good answer, so we hope it doesn't come to beyond that. But quarterback, as I've said over and over, the most important position in football, in team sports, period, and you better be good there if you want to have a chance to win. And so we've got to evaluate, just like I've got to evaluate my situation, we've got to evaluate the quarterback situation and make sure we have ourselves covered for next year. I guess that's the best answer I can give. PK.
Will Isaac be ready for spring ball?
Yes, we think that is going to be the case. There's still a few more evaluations that need to take place, but it's looking like spring ball is in play. Yeah.
And then with the transfers, obviously they've already been through the recruiting process. I'm wondering, where do they place as priority as far as NIL?
Incoming portal transfers for us?
Yes. Just generally.
Well, the top priority is being able to retain your own roster and the players on your roster that are particularly the key guys, and then you also have key roles that need to be filled through the portal, via the portal, and so that will be right there at the top of the list. And so we've already begun the process of having conversations with our own players and making sure that we got everything in order there, and then we move on to the next phase, which is the portal, and then of course your incoming freshmen will be involved in that as well. But portal will be a priority for us. I foresee being 10 to 15 players from the portal roughly, and that could change by a guy or two, but that's about the projection.
Kyle, last year you said was the worst for injuries you've ever been a part of. Is this year worse, and is there anything that can be done to avoid this happening again?
Well, that's a good question. Which one is worse? They're both been challenging. We did make a lot of adjustments in our fall camp and our ramp up to the season, which did pay dividends. We had, like I said, way back when, 70% fewer soft tissue injuries, but the injuries that we're incurring now, I don't know if you can do anything about that through training and all that stuff, but we certainly made a huge step forward in the soft tissue, which last year was a problem big time. And so I'm not a doctor or a physical therapist, but we feel like we're doing everything we can. We have a great strength program that our guys get bigger and stronger, and it's just I really have no great answer other than we looked at it from every angle this year, and we'll do it again after the season and try to continue to make progress in that regard.
And then, not to nail you down to a specific date, but how soon is it how important is it for you to make a decision as soon as possible for recruiting some players?
Well, with the coach and waiting in place, we already have that discussion with recruits that when that time comes, here's what the plan is, and so it's not like the recruits and our own guys don't know what the succession plan is, and so that takes some of the edge off it, and it would be a whole lot different if we didn't have that plan in place, because then when that time comes, it would be anybody's guess, what's going to happen and who's it going to be, but they know exactly what the plan is, and that again was the real reason for laying down that plan several months ago when it was announced.
Kyle, so many coaches, I mean, Nick Saban, Virginia's men's basketball coach recently, they've all sort of not been driven out of the game, but it played a factor. NIL played a factor in their decision. The game wasn't what it was for them, 20 years some ago, whenever they became head coach. Right. Does that impact your decision at all, the way the game's changed and evolved?
I think everything impacts that decision, and NIL is certainly the biggest game changer of them all. With the portal, they're kind of linked together in a way, and players, just the challenge of so much turnover in your roster, and playing for the love of the game now that's kind of a thing of the past. I mean, there's players that love football and would play if there wasn't NIL. I mean, that's not. I'm not saying that, but that seems to have taken a back seat to as far as their decision making anyway. Where am I going to play? It's who's got the best financial opportunity, and I guess you can't blame them. I mean, this is life-changing money for a lot of these guys that their families and everybody will benefit from, and so even it's here to stay. If you don't like it, get out, because it's not going to change, and so adapt or go a different direction, I guess.
To kind of follow up on that, Cam was seen on the sideline for the first time in a while in a boot. What, I guess, have you picked up on in terms of his decision, and how early or soon do you expect him to make a decision on his future?
I talked to Cam after the game Saturday, and we are going to visit this week and catch up and touch on that as well, what his plans are. And I have no inside scoop or anything right now as to what he's thinking. He's just just tried to give him some space and let him sort things out and decide which direction he wants to go, and so have a better answer after this week. But again, that's on Cam's timeline, and obviously we've got to at some point make our own decisions on what's going to happen if there's still indecisiveness. But I think that should be cleared up in the next week to 10 days. Yeah.
Was Isaac hurt when he was taken to the ground, or was he hurt on the ground when he was?
I think it was the rollover. Yeah, I think.
But there was no penalty. It was already down on the ground, and players' safety.
You're talking to the wrong guy about referees and penalties and what's going on there. I just don't. I don't even want to get into it. But no, the initial tackle was not what caused. It was the finish of the tackle, or what do you want to, whatever, however you want to term it, and that's what it was.
So piggybacking off of Cam's future, there are a couple of other guys who have been out for the season with injuries, mainly Camden Johnson and Levani DeMooney. Have you heard anything from the two of them regarding their future?
Yeah, they both would like to come back. As of our most recent conversations, now that again is just like everything is subject to change, but Levani's been rehabbing and doing very well, and if he decides to come back, he'll be ready to roll in January with off-season conditioning and jump right into it. Kennon's a different story. He was a very significant injury, and doctors, I've heard some opinions that maybe all the way up until fall camp before he'd be ready to try, and maybe not even quite at the beginning of fall camp. So that's a lot more extensive and a lot more to it than Levani. But they both have indicated that they would love to come back for another year, at least as of our last conversation, which has been a while with those two guys.
Following up on sort of the change in college football, it seems like you have a lot of buy-in still on the defensive side of the ball, and that's probably a credit to Morgan Scalley and that staff and their personable, personalities. How much more important is it for your culture the way you build your culture to come from coaches rather than players, just given kind of the way that players have that freedom to leave?
Yeah, we do have good culture and buy-in on D, but I feel like we have it on O as well. I don't think there's a division there. I think that we are in pretty good shape overall in that regard. But the coaches, it's constant teaching, just indoctrinating new guys to our culture and how we do things, and more so than before, because like I said, the numbers are what they are. You don't have 80% of your team returning, teaching 20%. You got just over half of your team returning, teaching just under half of the new guys. And so coaches need to jump in and be a big part of that. And it's more so than ever. And I'm sure it'll continue to be exactly that way. That's how it is. Yeah.
Kyle, at the beginning of the season, you said you had more energy than you think you might have had at any point in your career. The way the season has gone, where do you kind of gauge where your energy's at looking forward, and kind of in the belief of your energy? Do you feel like if you were to come back next year that you would still have a chance to maybe go out on top or go out on a winning season?
Yeah, like I said, it's what's best for the program will be dictated. My decision will be dictated based on, and to time it just right so you go out at just the right time. I mean, that there's very, very small percentage of people who are able to do that. And so, again, I'm not saying, well, this was a bad year, so for me, I got to come back and have a better year. I mean, everyone wants to have a better year next year, regardless of who the coach is. And like I said, it's just an evaluation process from me and my family to decide, what's best. And again, I continue to emphasize, put the program first, and whatever the program, what puts the program in the best situation, that's the decision I'll make. As far as energy, I feel great. I mean, I don't have any. It's not like I'm beat down. The season's been a beat down mentally, but physically and just day to day, got plenty of gas left in the tank.
Final question.
Coach, you've always valued those extra practices preparing for a bowl game. How much does it hurt, especially for the younger guys, not to have that?
Yeah, it's a downer, particularly for the younger guys, but not as much as before, because we'll have half a new team next year, and so they won't be here anyway to benefit from those practices. So it's nowhere near as impactful or beneficial as it has been, but it still is. I don't want to downplay it, because it's better than that half your guys get more opportunity than, and with the outgoing seniors, it might even be more than half, but or less than half that would benefit, but we don't have it, so there's nothing we can do about that, and just gotta jump into the off-season strength program sooner because of no bowl game, and pretty soon I believe you won't have spring ball either. I think that's going to be a thing in the past within not too long of a time frame, and so but that'll be our next opportunity to work them on the field. Did you say that was it? Dang. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you.
A lot there from Coach Witt today, the final media availability of the season, as this is the final game of the season, which still feels weird. Porter, did you hear Coach Witt reference how much energy he has, how good he feels?
I did.
You know what that is?
What is it, a sign?
It's testosterone therapy and vitality peptides.
There you go.
We got Ken on the line, man.
What a segue.
I'm taking care of the client. So I can't speak for Coach Witt, but I can speak for myself. About a year ago, met Dr. Angela Peterson, and she said, have you ever had your testosterone levels checked? I said, I haven't. I went in, quick blood work. She said, you're on the low range of normal for your age. You're fine, but you'll feel better if we up it a little bit. A year later, my levels are in the 800s, and I feel great. So I've been utilizing it for a year. About 6 months ago, she hooked me up with some vitality peptides, which have been helpful for sleep and mental clarity, skin and hair quality as well. So I'm a man in my mid-40s. Let's bring in Ken, who's a man in his mid-60s. Ken, let's hear about your experience at Lifestyle Men's Health.
Spence, I don't want to one-up you, but my testosterone levels, they were low as well, but I'm at 1087.
Oh, calm down, Ken. It's not a competition.
Actually, it is.
Fair enough.
I think the point that both you and I are making is that as we get older, and I'm actually north of mid-60s, and with that is I'm in the best shape of my life since I was in my 20s, to be quite honest. I was always overweight. Used to weigh close to 250. Now I weigh 170. 170, actually. I was going to say 175, but I jumped on the scales, and now I'm 170. But my point I'm trying to make is, I play tennis 2 or 3 times a week. I play golf. I have all the energy out there. So if you're not feeling that, come in and see us so we can help you with this.
All right, Ken, what's the special offer you have for any listener who gives you a call today?
All right. So as I mentioned last segment, we're knocking it out of the park. We've got a package together for ED treatments using the stem cells. And by the way, most people have had to go to Mexico or Costa Rica to get this treatment. We're doing it here in Salt Lake and in Arizona where I'm at. But anyway, we're going to do the ED treatments. We're also going to do a year's worth of testosterone and a year's worth of weight loss at cost on both of those products because we want to bring this to the masses. So don't wait. Give us a call.
Today's the day. That's an incredible deal. You'll save a lot of money, and I can promise you're going to see results. Give them a call at 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203, 385-458-9203, or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thanks so much, sir.
You bet. Go Utes.
Go Utes. Tom Haberstroh, little NBA comes your way coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Gonna have Richard Smith and Dr. Chris Hill live in studio, former athletic director at the University of Utah. So we'll do a little Jazz basketball coming up at about 4 o'clock from right now. Now, keep in mind, tonight is the Craig Smith Coaches Show. And then after you hear from Riles and Craig, we will send you over to Monday Night Football, which should be a good one. It's the Harbaugh Bowl. So stay tuned for that. We are your home of the NFL in this conference, or excuse me, in this market. We are efforting Steve Young coming up here in just a little bit. We're going to bring in Tom Haberstroh as well to do a little NBA. The Utah Jazz got a good win. They're playing a little bit better. Offensively, they've been a lot better. We're going to bring in Tom to kind of unpack some reasons as to why. The Jazz play the Spurs again tomorrow. Am I the only one that's like, how many times have the Jazz play the Spurs? Seems like every time they have a game, it's against the Spurs. But the NBA Cup has thrown a little bit of a wrench in those plans. So Jazz got a good win against the Knicks on Saturday here in Salt Lake. It may have been the best game I've seen them play all year. They're 4-12. They're 2-5 at home. They're no longer last in the West. Have to wonder ultimately what this season is going to look like. So we'll get to some Jazz hoops coming up in just a little bit. But excited for this. Does not happen often because he's very busy. I had a chance to go play in his charity golf tournament. It was a first-class event, one of the best to ever do it, both in college and pro football. Steve Young, kind enough to join us on a Monday. Steve, happy Monday, sir. How are you?
You too, Spence. Great to have you last week, and your brother Nate. And Roan is a R-H-O-N-E. Got to get that out there because he's built a business that's amazing. It's I don't wear the suits all stretch, so for church that's all I wear. I don't wear anything. Never again will I wear anything other than stretch suits, man. I'm not messing around.
I'm with you. I'm currently wearing Roan. I wear it every single day, and I'm certainly proud of my little brother, man. He's certainly built a great company. Unfortunately, Steve, he doesn't have a lot of time to play golf, as you saw from the scorecard.
Yeah, no, it's okay. None of us do, so it's fine. It's fun. Well, it's good to be together. Good. Danny Ainge came down, and I love, Danny was the one that I watched when I was a freshman, just killing it at BYU, and gave me the idea that you could be great at something. And I remember I was the equipment manager. Floyd Johnson at the time had me come in and do the visiting team towels, so that after the game, and during the game, I would give them towels, and then I would clean up kind of the shower and everything after those guys left on the bus. And that was my job. And I got to sit on the visiting bench to watch Danny Ainge and that team in 1980 dominate. And so anyway, he came down and joined me for the tournament last week, as you saw, and I love seeing him.
And I remember playing basketball and lacrosse against your little brother. I hadn't seen Jimmy in a long time, so it was just great to be with everybody. And I can't thank you enough for having us out, Steve. So I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Jimbo played lacrosse. He was he loved playing defense, a long stick. And I go,
Yep.
Jimbo, what is lacrosse? It looks like to me that you just hack at people. You just take the stick and just rap. What kind of game is this, man? That was fun to watch that. That was great.
Yeah, most defensive players, that's all they do is hack at people. You would have been a great lacrosse player.
Hey, Spence, it's like anyone in defense look, defense is all about just, we don't want to screw you up. Same in football, I mean, how can you play defense in football? Like, what's my job? Just to screw everything up. I just want to screw up. I want to mess everything up. Like, what kind of world is that to live in? I don't understand it.
Yeah, no, I hear you, Steve. So I want to start with just a macro overview question about the season Brigham Young has had after Vegas set the over-under at 4.5, and the media picked them to essentially finish last. And yes, they've lost 2 straight, but if they win on Saturday, that's a 10-win season, which is nothing to shake your head at all. What do you most attribute what most people believe is a very surprising season from BYU football this year?
Well, number one, I think Jay Hill's built a defense, especially the first 3 quarters of the season. And all of us are wondering kind of here at the end what's gone, not gone wrong, because like you said, the expectations. But we just have to, let's deal with the Big 12 championship every year, and let's just be that, right? And so if we say to ourselves, how did we get here? We got here on the first 5 games on a defense that was not going to let the game get away from us. And because it didn't get away from us, and I really appreciate Jake Retzlaff and his work that he did in the offseason to change his game, he got better. And when he showed up in the fall, he was a better player than he was the year before. And I just admire that, because so much of that is the grinding work of school work, of going in, the film memorization. It's the stuff that is boring and tedious, and I appreciated that. So that allowed Jake to come out and learn and have some space in those early games and he didn't do anything crazy bad. He just took some time to grow, and the offense grew with him, and all of a sudden these stars showed up all over the field. And to me, that's how it happened. And then we won some close ball games and kind of got some momentum. And I think just here when we got to sixth in the nation, and everyone we watched all week at ESPN when they were doing the show, and also BYU's in the top four and getting them by, and maybe Ohio State comes to us, and it was heady things that we had not had the privilege of being around for a long, long time, and to be there and to taste it was amazing, and we got to get used to it. And I think the last two games, particularly, are ones that I don't know that we were ready yet. Like you have to wear the shoes. You got to be in those games and know what's at stake, and know and deal with the build up, and it's just an emotional sophistication that you get over time that we need to just we need to kind of grow into. So that's my kind of sense of the season. I'm ecstatic at what we got out of the season. There's no question what we can still get out of the season. But if we're, I just pray that we get a shot at the championship, because if we can be unleashed again emotionally and kind of stand in the shoes that we were in the middle of the season, I think, as I said then, I remember when Fox came to town for the Arizona game, well, we can stay with anybody, but we have to be comfortable in the shoes that we're wearing at the time. So I know that's a bad analogy, but you get the idea.
No, I get the idea, and I actually wanted to follow up there because it's different when you are not expected to do much of anything and you just catch everybody off guard. But ultimately, they were at 9-0 with everything in front of them, the old cliche that I don't like, controlling their own destiny. So what's the type of mentality and the approach that you have to take once you go from nobody expected us to be here to we're at the top of the mountain and all we need to do is handle our business, because they have not been unable to do that, Steve, in the past two games? Like, what's the change in mindset once you get into that space?
It's human nature. When as I said, we need to start every season with, we're going to go to the Big 12 championship, and that is it's make or break, and we're going to recruit that way. We're going to play that way. We're going to call defense and offense that way, and that's where we have to live. And we have to have that expectation. The idea that we thought we'd be fourth and now we're third, like, what's amazing? I mean, we thought we'd be 14th and then we'd be. I'm not much for that. Like, we need to have. If we're going to be in the Big 12, if we're going to compete, let's go do it. And I love what basketball has done and what football is going to do and what they're doing today. So the last couple of games, you could tell that emotionally, again, I felt it. It was funny, like, as you're watching ESPN, you're watching they describe the playoffs, who's seedings and what it was going to be, and it's just really, really heady stuff. And so I think when you're not used to it, which how can you be used to it? We've never been there. And even when we won the national championship in 1984, it wasn't the same kind of situation. And so this is just we're in a new spot, and it's really cool. It's fun. It's like exciting. But human nature is when you get those huge expectations, you're not used to it, you tend to retract. You tend to kind of be careful. And because you don't want to lose it. You're like, oh my gosh, I have a shot here. This is amazing. Let's not blow it. And it's just natural when you haven't done it very much that you're not as expansive as you were when you didn't have anything to lose. And all of a sudden you have lots to lose, and it's hard. And so the way I would get through it, which is what I was hoping for last week, is that after getting kicked in the teeth at home against Kansas, that we would say, okay, enough of that. Let's fake it till we make it. Like, we're not going to do it this way. Let's let it rip. And I think in the second half last week we did, and we almost pulled it off. But because we started slow, and I guess you have to go through it. The school has to go through it. Fans have to go through it. The coaches have to go through it. The players especially have to go through it. So we'll build those muscles, and that's what the season is amazing about. But I don't want any talk about, it doesn't matter. We had a great season. No, we are here. Own it. Jump in. Don't give an inch. And we just pray that somebody loses this week so we can get in that championship game and build the muscles that we're going to need for the next 25 years. This is not going away. We don't want it to go away. And so I just can't stand when we settle when things have gone so well. No, this is us every year. So nothing but. And so I want to make sure that people kind of hold on to that.
One of the best to ever do it, Steve Young, is our guest on a Monday. Steve, you referenced the improved play of Jake, and I want to dig into it because I love talking to quarterbacks about other quarterbacks. And last year, 0-4 as a starter and just way too many mistakes. And unfortunately, that interception down the stretch against ASU was costly. But he's been so much better than he was a year ago, and I think so much better than most people thought he could be, probably people even down there. What do you attribute most his overall improvement to, and how good can he be moving forward next season?
One of his best qualities is I call him a swashbuckler. It's like I'm not sure what that actually means, but in the image of my mind is somebody who gets back and the ball's coming out and it's going to be aggressive. And so I like that about him. But the problem is it was unwieldy and wild and reckless. And so the only way to take what is a good quality and hone it so that it becomes something profitable is to own the data. Your brain has to be able to have reflexive recall of coverage and have instinctive sense of when safeties are rotated. Where does that mean? Where's my weaknesses? Where are people going to be? That's the one thing about defensive football is sooner or later they'll tell you what's happening, but if you got to pay attention, and you have to be able to own the data to get there. You have to be able to come out of the huddle, not be thinking about the play, not be thinking about motion. That should be instinctive. Not thinking about blitz, not thinking about tendency. It's like I got all that. It's in my mind. It's reflexive. Now I can really just hone in on safeties, follow them, and that'll tell me the truth of what this defense is doing. And then I'm not throwing it into people's chest. I'm ahead of it. So even when there's little nuanced things that happen where receivers adjust or where I have to move in the pocket, your brain is now processing something that you can actually, it's not wild, it's like set. And that's where every quarterback's trying to get. And so that's why I admire Jake's work to really start to hone that in. Is he there all the way? Obviously not. But I want to tell him that I know how hard that was, and he has gotten significantly better. And I hope this week that he is, I know you got to school. No, you don't have to go to school this week, do you? So he should be studying 8 hours a day to try to make sure that he has that reflexive recall so that against Houston, everything, I'm ahead of the data. There's nothing that happens that shocks me. I still might make a choice to take a risk. I still might make, someone might knock the ball out of my hand. I still might I might make an athletic move that costs me where, I fumble or the ball slips out of my hand. There's things that physically can happen, but my mind will always be ahead of every play. And if that's the case, you're going to play great football.
So I want to ask you a question about Kalani. When Kalani was up here as the D coordinator, we did a coach's show every week, and I, became a real fan, not just of him as a football coach, but of him as a person. I'm not sure how you can not be a fan of Kalani. And there was this really cool video going around social media, Steve, of Kalani in 2017 after the East Carolina loss, which was their 7th straight, showing up to do his coach's show on BYU TV, and then seeing all of his family, kind of fill in, and the players and their families fill in to kind of fill the area to show their support because there was a lot of heat around him, and Kalani started crying when he saw the support. And so I've always pulled for him because I want him to stay employed and do well, and all of our Utah guys, A-Rod, et cetera. What sort of questions do you think Kalani has answered as far as the way he's been able to figure out this new reality of college football with a really solid season, no matter how it ends?
Kalani's he's an inspiration. You want to play for him. You want to win for him. He'll stand there. He'll take it. He's accountable. He's willing to risk it for you. Like he makes you feel like he's got my back, and no matter what happens, and I love that about him. And he's trying to kind of channel Lavelle Edwards in his heart, and he talks about it a lot. And I see that. I see the ability to see other people and their potential and kind of inspire them to be better. That's his best quality. Now, and I think defense, he has instincts for defense. And I think when he jumps in and really helps there, it matters. And with Jay, I think that he's got somebody there that is, top-line recruiter. That's I know it's not number one, but Jay Hill's a number one recruiter. Like, he's very good, and we're not – that's a long answer, but back to Kalani. But we recruit sometimes. We can be petty at times. We can be a little institutionally lazy a little bit, where we, if you don't want to be here, maybe this isn't the right place for you. We got to, and I think we're changing. We're getting so that we'll compete against anything. If we lose to Georgia, if we lose to Utah, if we lose to USC, that's okay. We're going to be in the mix, and we're going to get in the mix more and more. And so Jay Hill, I think, is the help that Kalani can get on defense. And then A-Rod, I think he's got people around him that can go do those things that to alleviate the stress, so that he doesn't have to do too much. And I think on the offensive side, we've got to be better recruiters. We've got to be able to attract, 4 or 5 great quarterbacks and then pick. And we've got to, do the outreach. We've got to do the day-to-day. We've got to do the blocking and tackling. We've got to do all the stuff that's going to help Kalani be able to put the team on the field, because everybody in the country, Louis Riddick is a good friend of mine. He does ESPN college games. I did Monday Night Countdown with him for a couple of years. I love Louis. Louis is a smart, dynamic human being. And when he came out to BYU, he had thoughts about what BYU is going to be, and he left inspired. And so much of it was about Kalani and about Tom's athletic program and the sense of inclusion that they built, and the way that Kalani coaches, and the way he teaches, and the way that he's authentic day to day. And so all of that is so vital about diversity and all the other issues. Louis Riddick left. He's like, man, BYU and Kalani, I'm in. And I think that's the way the country's starting to understand, and that's why he's so important to us. We need Kalani. We need him to be all of who he is, and then also look for the help for the things that he, he can't do everything. And so I think he's finding that balance. And so I love what you said about in 2017. If Kalani's in trouble, I'm going to show up. I'll be there. I want to rally around Kalani, and that's the kind of guy he is. And so, my sense of it is that we're in the Big 12. Let's act it. Let's be it. Let's be all about it. And this should not be a surprise. And Kalani's not surprised. Let's go do it every year.
Steve, before I set you loose, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to ask you about I don't think I've ever heard you speak on this, your opinion on what college football has become, and what do you think it will eventually become when the dust actually finally settles and there's no more chaotic alignment. Obviously NIL, transfer portal, I am for these players getting paid. Ultimately, they have always been the product, and a business was built on their backs, and they didn't get a piece of it, so I'm fine with it. But a lot of people aren't necessarily down. Now, it hasn't affected ratings. It hasn't affected attendance. But what's the Steve Young take on the ever-changing landscape of college football, and what do you think comes next?
Well, look, equity value in sports is just growing exponentially. It's nuts. The NFL equity values in that's the value of the team. If they had stock, is this is the value of the team. For the San Francisco 49ers, let's say in 2000 it was $300 million, $400 million. In 2024 it might be $12 billion. It's insane. And so college football has equity value, and that's what everyone's trying to grab, right? Everyone's trying, and the players, college kids, were trying to speak to the NCAA for years. Look, this money is just growing exponentially, and we're the ones on the field, and we're the ones that are have injuries and we're not graduating, we don't have insurance, and we're not, this is crazy. And so the NCAA basically just closed their ears forever, and it got burned, because then it went to the judiciary, and the judiciary said, look, these guys, it's not fair. And so then now it became the Wild West. Now, this year, as you know, Spence, coming in 25 is the $20 million. It's there's money that's going to come now from the school. It's going to be a portion of the proceeds. It's going to be revenue sharing, which is smart, right? It starts to stabilize what is insane right now. And the NIL and the Wild West, and then the schools are, some schools they're in charge of the NIL when they're not supposed to. And it's the whole thing is such a mess. So that will bring some stability. And unfortunately, that stability will bring stability to the conference shifts that have happened. Like there's some, like Stanford's going, I mean, they go play, Duke and North Carolina State. Like they go to Rutgers. Like it's crazy. Like UCLA going to Penn State. Like it doesn't, long term, it's not sustainable. But for a little while, that revenue sharing from colleges and from and kind of sharing the equity value to the players in a form of payments is going to stabilize things for a little while, but it's not over time sustainable. You got to figure that whatever the Pac-12 was will come back at some point. It's just too much geographic sense. You got to figure that somehow, but the Big 12 and the Big 10, other than the West Coast teams, are set, I think, for some time. SEC's set for some time. And look, there's a good friend of mine's kid was highly recruited, and he's getting paid $250,000 a year as a kid in college. And so that's the reality now. So that brings with it all kinds of complications and challenges at a younger age. Well, it was always a challenge for pro players at 22, 23, being the first ones in your family history to have any kind of wealth. What does that mean for the family in general, for you? How do you deal with it? Now you're asking 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds as they try to pay kids that are still in high school and go around like signing deals and card deals. And, so you got a kid who's a sophomore, who's a highly recruited kid, and now he's collecting $100,000 a year, $150,000 as a 15-year-old. And the pressure that puts on him, the family, these are all complications that are not going away, and we have no answer for it right now.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for the time and how busy you are. And it was a pleasure seeing you last week. I really appreciate the invite. So have a great Thanksgiving. All the blessings and love to you and your family. And you're welcome to come on the show anytime, Steve. I'll tell you that.
Spence, it's like you don't have me very often, so I got to let it all out at once. I apologize for that. You can tell it's a therapy session for me because my wife doesn't care, my kids don't care. I only have one place to tell it, so I got to tell you everything I feel. Now you have it, and good luck to you.
Thank you, my friend. There he is, the great Steve Young, one of the best to ever do it, both in college and pro football. You can find more information about his charity at foreveryoung.org. That's who we were kind of supporting last week at his charity golf tournament in Scottsdale. All right, coming up next, we will do some basketball. Tom Haberstroh is going to join us, but let's bring in Ken from Lifestyle Men's Health on a Monday. Ken, happy Monday. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. So my experience at Lifestyle Men's Health has just been life-changing. There's no other way to put it. Dr. Peterson calls it biohacking, and we should point out that Dr. Peterson is an absolute pro. She had a service show up to my house last week to take some blood. She followed it up the next day with my levels. So she's very organized. She can walk you through everything that you need to do. For me, the game changers have been testosterone replacement therapy and vitality peptides. They have improved my workouts. I'm about 15 pounds lighter than I've been probably since my late 20s, and I put on some healthy muscle as well. So that's been my experience, Ken, with Lifestyle Men's Health. Let's hear yours.
You betcha. As I mentioned in the last couple segments, I've, dealt with erectile dysfunction for over 15 years, and that's actually how I met Dr. Angela Peterson. She helped me, get that under control, but also the testosterone, the peptides that you keep alluding to, that is kind of a game changer. But one thing I want to make sure that all your listeners understand, we have a free 30-minute consultation. It costs you nothing to come in and find out what you may need or may not need. And we'll make sure that we customize a program around what you actually need, not what we're just talking about everything. Because the biggest thing is, let's live our lives to its fullest potential and feel better as best as we can. What's the special offer, Ken, you have for our listeners to give you guys a call today? Well, as you know, Spence, it's a great one. So we've got anybody signs up for our ED treatment, that we also have a Black Friday special on. It's even lower than we've ever had it. But we're also including at our cost the TRT for 1 year at our cost, I should say. And then also any of you that need to lose some weight, there's a medically managed weight loss. Well, we're offering that also at our cost. So give us a call. Remember, it's a free 30-minute consultation. Talk to Dr. Angela Peterson, and she'll set you up. All right, guys, today is the day to call. It's such a great deal. Take advantage of it this holiday season. Do yourself a favor and dial 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203.
385-458-9203 or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks, Beth. Appreciate it.
Tom Haberstroh joins us coming up next. Don't forget, 4 o'clock hour of the program today. It's Richard Smith and Dr. Chris Hill live in studio for an entire hour. So stay tuned for that on a Monday on ESPN 700. All right, we got Richard Smith and Dr. Chris Hill live in studio coming up during the 4 o'clock hour of the program tonight, so that'll be fun. Special thanks to Steve Young for hopping on the show today. Special thanks to our next guest as we go from one GOAT to the next GOAT for being a little bit adjustable today and versatile today. Tom Haberstroh for some NBA basketball on a Monday. Tom, happy Monday, man. How we doing?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm good. So we'll do a little jazz here. We're not gonna do a ton of jazz because I think we all kind of know what time it is. We all kind of know what the deal is. But I'll say this: over the past 7 or 8 games, at least offensively, they don't guard anybody. They just don't. But offensively, they've been a lot better. And I thought that win over the Knicks on Saturday here in Salt Lake was probably the best game I've seen them play all year long. But what are your thoughts on, and if you have anything specific about the past 7 or 8 games, why does the offense look so much better, do you think?
Well, first of all, marketing helps.
Sure.
Having him back.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That guy is really good, and of course, really good against the Knicks too. But I think another thing that you have to really pay attention to is the shot selection is very modern NBA. We've got a head coach in Will Hardy who is as astute as it is when it comes to what is the best way to win in today's NBA. And what I mean by that is the Utah Jazz are the leaders in one category offensively that probably is a little under the radar, but I just wrote about this at Yahoo Sports. There are these things that I'll coin as shot desert games. These are games in which teams do not make a single shot in the mid-range. They don't take a single shot, make a single shot. They don't score in the mid-range. They just abandon it. And while it is, for us who grew up in the 90s, it is kind of sad to see how the mid-range game is dead, but it is the smart way to play, just in the same way that in baseball, the smart way to play is to try to hit it over the fence and get walks. And it might not be appealing from a product standpoint. It is what the math tells us to do. And what the math tells NBA teams to do is what the Boston Celtics did last season, is bomb away from three and attack the rim and go for rim attacks. And the Jazz lead the league in most games in which they don't score from the mid-range. And normally you might say, that's a bad thing. Well, no, the mid-range game is kind of a dead zone. You don't get fouled. It's a low percentage shot. And there's only a few players that it makes sense to be living in the mid-range, whether it's Chris Paul or DeMar DeRozan. And the Utah Jazz continually do this. And even, in Saturday's game against the Knicks, they scored 121 points and only one basket was in the mid-range. And they have more shot desert games than any other team. It's 4 to this point in the season, and this number is exploding league-wide. We didn't even have a single team a decade ago with any of these games, and now we're on pace for about 150 desert games where they don't score from the mid-range for the entire game. And so we're almost double what we're pacing at almost double the rate at what we normally see over the last couple of years. And there's a real inflection point we're seeing in the NBA where teams, smart offenses, even if they're not being able to make all the shots from downtown, it's not every night that you see the Jazz shoot, 19 to 34, 56% from downtown. But this is kind of by design, is that they have made the team buy into this, threes and rim shots, attacking the basket and not worrying so much about the mid-range, try to get to the free throw line, try to take threes. And so far, I think that shot profile is really helping them slim the talent gap. And you saw it in Saturday night, just how good they look when the three ball is falling. But it's not a matter of being lucky. This is a team that is designed that way, and the offense is designed that way. And I think it's really smart. Even if it's a little sad for us watching and growing up watching Michael Jordan, this is the way to win in today's NBA, and they're doing an excellent job of it.
So do you think the league will look, because I read your piece, and that's kind of why I asked you the question, to lead you into that answer so you could explain it to our listeners, because you unpacked it better than I could. But the fact of the matter is, you and I will watch NBA basketball, but a lot of people aren't. The ratings are suffering. I don't know if it's the product. I continue to believe until stars show up every single night, unless We got to say it unless they're hurt. I know. But you can't argue with the numbers. And yes, they can throw their P&L statement at me and say, where's the problem? I say, okay, I get it. But do you think the decline in NBA ratings is because nobody wants to just watch a team, shoot 60-plus threes. Nobody wants to, watch a three-point shooting contest unless it's during All-Star weekend. And as numbers tell us, people don't really like to watch that either. Does the league have a problem with this style of play that you outline in your piece? Do you think they look to do something about it?
I think they're always looking to do something about it. I mean, this is the same league office that introduced the in-season tournament, the play-in tournament, as well as the Elam ending and the All-Star, the NBA draft for the All-Star. They're trying to figure out ways to augment or gimmick or gamify the season. And I don't think that the shot selection is off the table in terms of how do we adjust this to make it more appealing for the audiences. And I think, Nick Wright, the reason why I did that story was Nick Wright went on his podcast. It wasn't on Fox Sports 1, but it was on his podcast that it went viral where he was like, the NBA has a entertainment problem, is that it's not as entertaining as it used to be. And a lot of that is because of all the threes. And he suggested the idea of making dunks worth 3 points. That was one of his proposals. And I think it gets at something that I think we do need to consider is, should we make the mid-range alive again and make more shot diversity where it doesn't feel like it's just threes and rim attacks every time down the floor? My suggestion is this 2-3-4 system where you shorten the three-point line to about 15 feet to bring back the mid-range, and then you extend the current three-point line to a 4-point line at about 35 or 40 feet. You make it far enough that it's a real challenge for NBA players to hit it, so it's not just going to be a bunch of dudes pulling up from half court every time. But you also want players to want to go to the rim, to want to shoot from 20 feet, and want to shoot from 40 feet if it makes sense. And so I think that proposal is one of my favorites that I've heard. There's also, and I talk about this in the piece, the idea of, do we get rid of the corner three so that you don't have two guys standing in the corners and then getting a shorter shot? Because the NBA dimensions make it such that the corner three is about a foot shorter than a normal three. And so there's an advantage there. Get rid of that advantage and you won't see as many three-pointers. There's another idea that I've heard is capping the number of three-pointers that you take, to about 20 per quarter. So basically you have 20 per game. So you have basically 20 three-pointers to play around with, and then after that, any three-pointer is worth 2 points. All those ideas are getting to the same, trying to solve the same problem, which is it feels like the NBA is all about threes and all about rim attacks, and some of the creativity and ingenuity and spontaneity of the NBA that might have been around in the 80s and 90s. It might be overstated how, the X's and O's were amazing and the game was amazing because of this. A lot of those games were just, it was wrestling. It was a different sport. It was not the same thing as what we're seeing today, and in a bad way. So I'm not saying that everything was perfect in 1995. It wasn't. But the idea of there's too many threes and it might be repelling some people from watching the sport, I understand that viewpoint. But I don't think that making dunks worth 3 points is the answer. I think it'll make more injuries because of, it's a violent sport already, but making it a dunk worth 3 points would only increase the mid-air collisions, and you'll see Chet Holmgrens of the world land horribly and be out because of a broken hip. I think that would be more commonplace in a league with a three-point dunk. But I do think bringing back some shot diversity and bringing back the mid-range in a way that makes sense, I think could go a long way to bringing back some viewers who feel like this game is just make or miss from downtown, and that's going to dictate everything, is whether my team made threes, and certainly the Utah Jazz on Saturday night were evidence of that, is how good they look when those threes are dropping. But some other nights, it's pretty hard to watch.
What do you most attribute the lack of solid ratings to, Tom? Maybe it's just this. And look, historically speaking, it's been a number of years since pro basketball was even within a earshot of pro football. And this time of year, most everybody that are sports fans are they're watching football, college and pro. Sunday Night Football is the highest rated television show in our country, not sporting event, television show. So we will see the numbers improve come, January, February, when bowl season is behind us, the Super Bowl is behind us. But it's undeniable that these NBA ratings, like the first couple of weeks, like whatever. But now we've got a sample size. We're approaching Thanksgiving where some of the time slots are down as much as like 30, 40%. This is not 5 or 6%. Why do you think people aren't watching pro basketball right now?
Well, I think a large majority of that slide is due to the absence of stars. And you hit on it in the beginning, and I'll just give you this stat. Games missed by stars is up 52% compared to last year. 52% increase. Through 15 games of the season, we've had 152 injuries, and last year at this point there was 100 games lost due to injury. So last year we had 100 games lost due to injury for stars, and now we're looking at 152 over that same time period. So what we're seeing is, a nice return of stars. DeJounte Murray, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Kristaps Porzingis. These guys are coming back, but a lot of players are not. Luka Doncic is out for a week. You have Joel Embiid. Who knows what's happening with that guy? Kawhi Leonard is still out for the season. Chris Middleton, we have no real timetable for his return. And we're seeing star players miss at extreme rates compared to recent history. And I think there's this happy medium between being smart and being good business smart, right? Like there's smart in the medical sense of like, hey, we're holding out these players because we don't want to hurt them for the long run, or we're having preventative treatments so that, this knee sprain doesn't turn into a torn ACL. I get that. But also there has to be a happy medium between that and what we're seeing now where injuries or games lost due to injury or absences are up 52%. And so, it's not good for business to have a Thursday night game without any stars, or have, the Clippers playing the Sixers in the opening week of the season and only Paul George is playing. You got no Joel Embiid, no Tyrese Maxey, no Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard. And that's not good for the sport, not just for that night, but also the message it sends to potential viewers is, oh, I'm going to watch this Sixers-Clippers game. Wait a minute. Those guys aren't playing? Ah, man. Like, this is just another game where the NBA stars aren't playing. That can kind of really poison the well. And I'm hoping that this avalanche of injuries is really coming to an end here, because we are seeing some players come back this week, which is really good for the NBA Cup. The NBA Cup is coming up, and I really hope that we have a full, roster of star players, because this is a star league. And when, injuries or games lost due to injury to star players is up 52%, that's about as much of an explainer as anything.
Well said. Good stuff. Let me go back to the Jazz for a moment and just kind of kick the tires with you on some potential storylines and topics. This year, and they took a big step back with their developmental program after Taylor broke his leg, poor kid, because he came back in great shape and he was looking pretty good. Marketing cannot be traded. Maybe all I need to say to real NBA fans about who the Jazz are is John Collins might be their best player so far. Maybe that's all you need to know. But, certainly Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, open for business at all times. Do you think any of these vets are going to be on the move? Because there is when watching the Knicks game, I'm thinking, all right, marketing's back. Here we go again. Are they going to start winning a little? Because Lowry's that good. And when they're hitting shots like they were, they have the ability to win some games, which I very much do not want them to do. I've been on that page for 2 years, as you know, Tom. So bring on the losing. Like when they started losing where it seemed to be pretty obvious that they were leaning into this development, they started losing. I felt better about their direction than I have in 2 years. But do you think we're going to see Danny and Justin maybe break this down? Like if they start winning, Tom, if they go on some run where they win like 12 of 14, which I do not believe that they will do, but if they do that, will they start breaking this down prior to the February deadline this time?
Yeah, it's just the perverse incentive structure of the NBA, right? Is that we're rooting if you're a Jazz fan, you're conflicted. You're rooting for them to lose because it might give them the best chance at a star in that market. It might be the best route, the best path to getting a foundational star. But it's also, you look at the Detroit Pistons, you look at for so long the Sacramento Kings, the Minnesota Timberwolves when they got Andrew Wiggins, and then only saw, all of that mediocrity to continue under Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns. And it's like, we got 2 number 1 overall picks and we're still not anywhere until they moved Andrew Wiggins, and then they got Rudy Gobert and, of course, Anthony Edwards, another number 1 overall pick. It's more art than science how to build a championship team. But the problem is that the incentives are right there, is you have more ping pong balls if you are not good. And so I think that will be the, telling factor is how much they got to be in the bottom 5, but it doesn't have to be necessarily the worst team. But I think if they're going to be record wise, on that 5-6, bottom of 5-6 teams, I think that'll be enough to, give them a solid shot at a star in the draft. But, the question is, you look at a team like the Houston Rockets, where they're now have won as many teams, and I wrote about this for TomTheFinder.com, my Substack. They're 12-6 right now, and they've built through the draft. You look at Alperen Şengün, Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Reed Shepherd's glued to the bench because there's just so many good young players on that team. Tari Easton's been fantastic for them. They made one signing right there with Fred VanVleet, and he's kind of set the tone for the locker room. And that is a model for the Utah Jazz, is like building. It's going to take a few years, but building through the draft and seeing where it gets them. But you have to hit. And the Houston Rockets, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they've built through the draft in a way that is a nice model for Houston, but you have to make sure you nail those picks. And so for the Jazz, it's like, yeah, we can build through the draft, but if we don't get Cooper Flagg in the draft, will this be all for naught? And unfortunately, the NBA, for a small market team, the odds are not great to begin with, and the odds might be best if you build through the draft like OKC and Houston has, and hope you can nail those picks, and you can get an Alperen Şengün, you can get a Chet Holmgren or a Jalen Williams. But the history of the NBA shows, you need a superstar, and probably 2 or 3 of them in order to win a championship. And for Utah, it's just going to be really hard to bring one in without having enough bites at the apple at the top.
Before I set you loose, because I know you got to go, and if you need to go quick, just be quick with the answer. But here's the thing. I've never considered anybody to be able to win a, quote, triple crown in pro basketball because I simply thought it was entirely impossible. And Nikola Jokic is second in rebounding. Right now, he's second in assists. He leads the league in rebounding. He's second in scoring, and he's second in assists, and he's shooting like 43% from 3. Maybe we're numb to it, but he strikes me as like this virtuoso who's mastered the cello and wants to retire and go do something else. What do you make of what we could potentially see with Jokic this year?
I hate to correct you, but I'm only doing it because I love you and because it's even funnier. The stat is Jokic isn't shooting 43% from downtown. He's shooting 56%.
Oh, my gosh. I must have had the wrong stat. That's insane. Jeez.
Insane. 56% Spence from downtown. And it's, you do have to qualify it. I'm not so sure he qualifies right now just because of the games played from the three-point standpoint. But 56% from downtown, first in rebounding, not quite, like you said, not quite assists and points right now, but he's right in the mix of it. I never thought I'd see anything like that. But then again, I thought I'd never see LeBron James score 40,000 points, and I thought I'd never see someone break Oscar Robertson's triple-double record. And then basically Russell Westbrook did it 3 times. So I can't put it past Jokic. He's a virtuoso. He is the best player in the NBA, and I don't think it's particularly close this season. I don't know if he'll have the volume or he'll continue to shoot that well from downtown, but it's all things are possible with that guy. He is a savant. He is the chosen one in terms of like basketball skill. And he's got incredible hands. He's second in the NBA in deflections. We're not even talking about the steals and block numbers for Jokic, but he's second in the NBA in deflections per game behind Dyson Daniels, which no one realizes is that he's just got these ridiculous mitts that not just has the touch, but also just the hand-eye coordination is ridiculous. And so Jokic is incredible. He's my pick, easy pick for MVP at this point, and it's certainly within the realm of possibility that he could have that triple crown, so to speak, in points, rebounds, and assists, but also that three-point percentage is insane, 56%. Unbelievable.
Heading back to the motherland, Tommy, tomorrow, so I'll pay my respects to the great, I'm sure, Tom Haberstroh statue that's outside of Staples High School at some point. So have a great Thanksgiving, my friend. Thank you for the time, okay?
You too, and I'll just say this. Charlotte, where I live, they just announced Dave Matthews Band is going to headline a festival here, so I'm already trying to get in line for tickets.
Stop it. I'm gonna fly out. We'll go to a Dave show together. Let's do it.
Dude, count me in.
There it is. Tom Haberstroh, the great Tom Haberstroh, one of my favorite NBA guests. All of his work, he's very busy. He's about to go record a podcast. He does like 5 a week. TomTheFiner.com is his Substack. He writes a column for Yahoo Sports, and he's on the Blazers broadcast team. My man has like 7 jobs. At Tom Haberstroh is where you find him. All right, before we catch a break, welcome in Doug from Farmer and Chemist on a Monday afternoon. Doug, happy Monday, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing great. Happy to be with you. Thank you.
Appreciate the time today. So what I've utilized, you guys introduced me to these gummies to help me sleep at Farmer and Chemist, and it has been a game changer because I don't like sleep meds. I've tried them all. And by all of them, I mean quite literally all of them. And I'm no longer taking any of the pharmaceuticals. I'm utilizing the gummies. How can you help people like me that have a tendency to struggle sleep?
Well, I think one of the things you identified is the prescription medications for sleep cause a lot of side effects. There's definitely some negatives to them. So Farmer and Chemist CBD with CBN gummies, or yummy gummies, as we call them, are amazing to help people fall asleep a little bit easier, set their mind at ease so they're not overthinking things at night and stressing out, and then getting a quality night's sleep. So it's amazing. One a night, and you feel better the next day.
And I want to continue the theme of trying to help people that might find themselves hooked on some damaging pharmaceuticals or prescription drugs, namely painkillers and opioids, where we all know the deal, man. We're in this horrible spot as a country. But ultimately, people are in pain, and they need relief. And you guys can also help people that have chronic pain. Doug, let's hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Pain is a real thing. We used to call it the sixth vital sign. I got some negative press with all the opioid news. So that's a little bit negative. But the positive is that Farmer and Chemist CBD with CBG gummies, as well as the tinctures, and not just the oral medicines, but the topical medicines like Problem Salve, so you can rub on for local inflammation relief, are fantastic for chronic pain as well as for acute pain. So strain your back, Farmer and Chemist Problem Salved. It's great. Just rub it on. Can't wake up in the morning because you've got achy bones and stiffness. Yummy Gummy with CBG takes care of all the inflammation and makes you feel better every day.
All right, Doug, I'm sure a lot of people feel like we're just speaking Italian, right? Because they're just not educated. And I wasn't either until I met you guys, and I was able to ask questions, and you were help me kind of walk through exactly what this is all about. So for listeners that are curious, you have a special deal for them. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. You can come into the store, 7719 South Main Street in Midvale, or you can reach out to us online at farmerandchemist.com. and our staff will help you. And if you don't need CBD, that's fine. We'd love to teach you about it anyway. But if you need some, we'll help you get the right product made from the best pharmaceutical agents that money can buy. So it's absolutely the best CBD on the market.
Doug, thank you, sir, for your time. Have a great Thanksgiving. Look forward to chatting with you again soon, okay?
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to all.
All right. Doug from Farmer and Chemist. Time now to give away $25 to our good friends at Farmer and Chemist. Text in right now, 877-353-0700. Let's see. Most overrated Thanksgiving food. Most overrated Thanksgiving food. When you show up to the in-laws this week and you sit down and you see this dish that everybody seems to love that you don't love. We'll do a little Thanksgiving. And if you win $25, you can go to Farmer and Chemist, get some gummies. Maybe that food tastes better. Just saying. 877-353-0700. Text in right now. We'll pick a winner, send you to Farmer and Chemist. Before we catch a break, we welcome in Ken from Lifestyle Men's Health on a Monday. Ken, happy Monday. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing well. I'm going to say cranberry sauce.
I'm so with you. That's the right answer, by the way, Ken. You and I are one mind there. Well said. My dad loves it, and it makes me want to puke. Anyway, let's move on.
Right.
All right, so
Exactly.
we are entering holiday season. A lot of food, a lot of drink, a lot of opulence and such. People are going to be eating a lot of food. We're also entering in Salt Lake and the surrounding areas a cold time of year where a lot of people hibernate. Now, as it's gotten colder, my history is when it gets cold, like I've got to summon every ounce I have to go get exercise or else I'm going to sleep in, right? And what I've noticed is with testosterone therapy and vitality peptides, I'm up early and I'm ready to go work out, which I've been able to go do as it still has remained cold. So Lifestyle Men's Health, for me, the two things have been testosterone replacement therapy and vitality peptides, and they've made a massive difference in my life. Let's hear about your experience.
You know, Spence, you hit it on the head. It's interesting. I've never been the one that liked to work out until I got on the testosterone. And now sometimes I work out twice a day. Matter of fact, in about a half hour, I have my personal trainer waiting for me. But my point being is now I have that drive to do it, which I've really never had before. And it's very, very important for all of us men and also women too, take care of our health as we get older. So one of the things, this is our last little segment before Thanksgiving. I want everybody to really write down the numbers when we tell you, because we have that free 30-minute consultation. Bring your wife or your partner in when you come in, because our special is huge. Anybody who signs up for the erectile dysfunction using stem cells, we're going to add a year of TRT at our cost. That's 12 months, plus the weight loss at our cost at 12 months. We have an incredible package just for your listeners, Spence, that we're going to offer that, and this is the last time we're going to be able to talk about it.
That's a massive, massive special, probably the best offer you've had so far. So if you guys have heard my conversations with Ken and Dr. Peterson, and you've almost called, but you've waited, well, you win. You played the long game, but today's the day to call because that's as good of a deal as you're going to get. Phone number, get ready. Here we go. It's 385-458-9203. That's 385-458-9203. 385-458-9203 or online at lifestylemensclinic.com. Ken, happy Thanksgiving, my friend. Be well, okay?
Yeah, same to you. Thanks, guys.
All right, we got Richard Smith and Dr. Chris Hill live in studio coming up next for the 4 o'clock hour, so keep it right here on ESPN 700. This song actually works in a lot of different ways, some which will remain off air. But excited on this Monday during Thanksgiving week to have Richard Smith live in studio. Smitty, you brought us a special guest. I'm going to let you introduce him. The floor is yours.
Oh no! This isn't. First of all, I'm merely here as the pawn in this whole
okay.
this whole charade that you've got going on. You know.
Oh, you think it's a charade?
Well, if you have me, I know that you're down at the bottom of the barrel, so I got to try and lift it up.
Okay.
Lift up as you fill the water jug. Right, the cream rises to the top, so you get Dr. Chris Hill in the studio, so he can bring something that makes sense to the show. Other than my blabbering all the time. So,
Dr. Hill, how are you, sir? Happy Monday.
Smitty, there's an old expression: you can BS the baker and get a bun, and you BS me, you get none. You got that? All right.
So it's been happening for a long time.
I'm doing fine.
This is going to be fun. Just three Northeast guys. We'll try to stay on track here, but I have a lot that I want to get to. First of all, we're kindred spirits. You enjoy Thanksgiving like I do, yes.
Oh, I sure do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my favorite. My staff is laughing right now.
Uh-huh.
I get notes from now. My old staff. They say, best day of the year. Oh, yeah, I drove them all crazy. I love it.
Yeah, so do I. All right, Dr. Hill, it's been a minute since you and I have been able to catch up, and I just can't. I'm shaking my head as I outline the fact that we're sitting here with 7 straight Utah football L's, first time since 1986, and they're a 9.5-point dog on Friday, which would be a historic losing streak for Utah football. I get a lot of things wrong. I don't know that I've ever been this wrong about something as far as how wrong I've been about this team. How do you unpack this?
Well, you're not the only one wrong.
For sure.
So you're not the Lone Ranger. I mean, we're all on the bandwagon. Now it's a 57 Chevy, the bandwagon. Nobody wants on. But it took me so much by surprise and still is taking me by surprise.
Yeah.
I'm just like, wow, each game. And they're just, I don't know what they would do. I forgot what those days were like. I mean, I still have that year I was around, but boy, in the late 80s and 90s, before you and Smitty were born, it was brutal. It was brutal. And so, Utes lose when you get up Sunday morning. That makes for a long week.
Yeah. I wonder, Smitty, how because obviously you were part of a lot of very successful Jazz front offices, but there were down years when you were rebuilding and losing seeps in. I wonder how you compartmentalize this, as we've talked about Utah football and their lofty expectations and what it's like for a locker room when the losing piles the way it has for Utah football.
Well, it's interesting. The difference, Spence, is, and guys would tell me this who played professional basketball overseas in some of the domestic leagues where sometimes they only play once a week on the weekends. And they'd say, you play in Greece, and if you only play on a team that plays in the domestic league, you're playing once a week. You're playing on Saturday or Sunday. And if you lose, then you got to deal all week long with all the talking about it and everything. You can't get back up on the horse till the next week. In the NBA, sometimes like the Jazz this week are going into a schedule starting tomorrow where they play 4 games in 6 days. So whether you win or lose, you got to go boom, boom. We got to get on to the next thing, right? And but in the football, like with what the youth football team is going through right now, 7 losses in a row. That's 7 weeks. That's almost 2 months that you've had to listen to. Why can't you guys win a game? Why couldn't you win the game you just played? What's the matter with you? And it just, I'll tell you what, I can only assume, with those guys that, especially when you're used to a winning culture and you're used to sustained success, like Kyle Whittingham has had up there for all these years, that you go through something like this, and it's not just the losses themselves in the league and the expectations and all that, but it just wears you out emotionally and mentally, having to hear about it all the time. And I can imagine what those guys are going through, especially now in the situation they're in. They don't have a bowl game to play for, so they have 1 game left on Friday, which you try and make it into your Thanksgiving bowl game. Let's go, guys, kumbaya, and all that stuff. But it's hard to get that reaction from those guys, even though they know that on Saturday they come home from Orlando and the season's over. It's all done.
Dr. Hill, you're the man who hired Coach Witt, and I honestly, and I say it all the time, I have a good relationship with Kyle. He's good enough to come on the show a few times throughout the year, even though they practice in the afternoons, but I don't have a pulse on how this has affected him. I watch his pressers. He looks tired. When I had him on the show a couple of months ago, we had a few minutes before recording, and I said, "How you doing?" He said, "This is as hard as it's been in a long time."
Yeah,
His media last week, Dr. Hill, struck me as a guy that said, "Nah, not like this," right? But how do you think this has affected a guy that you know probably better than us?
It's interesting. I went to work out at where Smitty and I do yoga. We're at peace with ourselves on that.
That I'd like to see.
Okay, yeah, and that's another.
Namaste, Spence.
Namaste.
Yeah, I'm a rainbow amongst the clouds. So, one of the things is I hadn't been in the football center for, I'll bet you 3 years. So I'm working out at Steiner, and it was last Tuesday. And I thought, sometimes it is 80. I just go by and see if Kyle's in his office and just shoot the crap for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So the secretary, we'll find him. He'd want to talk to you because I think, somebody's not going to say what's going on.
Sure, yeah.
So I walked in. I said, "Are you breathing?" Because I think so. I think so. I said, "Okay, let's just talk about our grandkids, all right? Let's do that."
There you go.
And then he only thinks about football is the whole quarterback thing. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
If you're the guy that touches the ball isn't, your guy, it's like not having a pitcher.
Right.
So obviously he was really down. I thought he lost some weight. But, you can see the strains there, and it's like he's a deer in headlights. He's, this just is weird. And I can't imagine when, being the AD, I people get, upset. And this is Kearns McCarthy. He owned the Tribune and all those family. And I used to go to St. Ambrose, and we lost to BYU, and this is like 1988. I'll never forget it. And he's passing the plate along to collect money. I'd rather lose to the Russians than BYU. And I'm sitting there going, "Hey, I just came to church. I thought the Lord would give me a break." And, and people around me are going, "What the heck?" So the moral story is Kyle's really, really got to be worn out. I just looked on his face, and I think he didn't want to rush out of the room because we weren't talking about football.
Sure.
And I never talked football at him.
Mm-hmm.
I always talked about how's you managing the team, stuff like that. But, he looked like he was really, really tired.
Tell me this, follow up here, because I truly don't know whether or not Kyle's decision to end his time as head coach is soon. And I don't know that this year matters as far as the context of what would be a really big choice for him. But what does your gut tell you as far as what you know about him? Do you think a season like this motivates Kyle to say not like this? Or do you think he's done enough where it's like, 1 year doesn't matter. I had 20 really good years at Utah.
I don't know. Everybody that's over 60, and I faced that too. Now I'm over 70. Mm-hmm. And, you get, I told him, he's, "What about you?" And I said, "Well, I didn't get down a yellow notepad and put one thing on the other." And I said, nobody can tell you what to do. And you can try to, if we win this year, we lose next year. Okay, the odds of me winning and blah, 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 blah. We all know it's a crapshoot.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this is pretty simple, but this is just why I said you buy your home because it just has great street feel.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest investment in your life.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest decision you make is to marry your wife because it felt good and you loved her.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get a yellow notepad, see if she went to the dentist, check her teeth, and you get your bicycle from Consumer Report. So I said, you know what? It got down to the point for me, it was a gut feeling. It wasn't like, should I stay another year? Should I do that?
Yeah.
And I wasn't making $6 million a year. I was doing all right, though. But still, it's the point where I don't know if you can base it on just one thing like that, or if you're going to win, you're going to lose. It's so precarious.
Yeah.
So my advice, it sounds simple, but it's your biggest decision outside of who you're going to marry, in a career like that.
Yeah.
Having children and all the family stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you can base it on one little win or loss. For me, it was all about how did I feel? What did I want to do?
Interesting. Smitty, I can't eloquently tie Kyle to Jerry as far as the way Jerry's career ended because that's a different outlier. That's a different thing. It was a moment in time with a player now who has admitted that he was a prima donna and a selfish ass, in his words, not mine. But I do remember Jerry oftentimes, when it came to losing, internalizing it in a way that probably wasn't very healthy because coaches are wired like that. And I think what Dr. Hill is describing with Kyle is kind of reminding me a little bit of every time Jerry would lose and fear that he's never going to win another NBA game. Coaches are wired differently, aren't they?
Yeah, and I also think that with the perspective of time and experience, some of those things start to get at you a little more. Your edges are worn down a little bit. With Coach Sloan, toward the end, he just didn't want to deal with a lot of the so-called heavy lifting that was involved in trying to keep the ship afloat and keep it going in the right direction.
Even with a pretty decent roster, right? Yeah.
We had a good team. But with what Chris is saying about Kyle, he's been there so long and has had such success and has had a formula and knows what he needs to get done to keep that train on the track and going in the right direction. Now, in the last several years with the NIL stuff and the transfer portal stuff, and now you have the new big league with the Big 12 or all those kinds of changes. And then you have a season like this where the expectations were out of whack, in my opinion, back in June and July, where everybody's talking about undefeated and getting the CFP and getting to the national semifinals and blah, 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 and whatever. And all that stuff goes awry very quickly. And those things, when you're at this stage of your career, whatever that is, for someone who's had that experience like he has had, to have to absorb that and have to deal with all of that stuff, I'm not sure it would be, as Chris is saying, a one-year decision like, well, I ain't going through this again or whatever. I think for me, I would think it would be more about, do I want to keep trying to do this the way that we're having to do it now, with the way that differently than I did it 10 years ago. A different approach, a different mindset. Do I want to do that? Do I want to reinvent myself in that regard at this point of my career? And and getting slapped in the head like you do with a year like this doesn't help that process. But you have to sit, just like Chris is saying, you have to sit in a dark room, with the lights out by yourself and just go, do I sell? Now, I heard his press conference today where he said, "Oh, I got plenty of gas in the tank. I have no problem with that." So I think it's just going to be, something like that. I'll say this much. I don't like, as an outside observer, a guy sitting up in row 25, just watching the games and being a fan of the game. I don't like the vibe that the public in general is giving, that, because he's had a bad year, he's got to decide to retire and all that kind of stuff because he's lost it or he's lost the locker room or whatever. To me, my opinion, that is so much baloney that it shouldn't even be, be talked about. They've had a bad year, injuries, things haven't gone their way, all the breaks they needed, they didn't get. That's just what happened in the last couple months. And, you have to take it for what that is and put it in the greater perspective to try and assess what you want to do going forward.
So a lot of good stuff there. And it's, Dr. Hill, it's an interesting balance, right? Because Smitty alluded to this, and I believe it to be true, that Kyle has earned the right to go out on his terms.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how I feel. And I believe that is the equity that he has built up in this market over 2 decades. But at what point, from an administrator's perspective, do you start to get concerned? Like, if we're sitting here, the three of us, let's make it an annual thing. Thanksgiving week, you guys are welcome here for an hour. If we're sitting here next year, Thanksgiving week, and they're 3-7, and Kyle's back, at what point, because, again, Coach Witt alluded to this earlier, it's hard to go out at the right time, right? It's almost impossible. But, yes, I believe he has earned the right to call his shot. But from an administrator's perspective, when do you start asking questions?
When you feel like it. You get to the point where I always tell everybody that the evaluate, people get real, I got a PhD, but I don't use all that stuff sometimes because some things are really simple, like I just talked about it. So an employee comes into your office and says they're going to resign. Are you dancing on the tabletops or are you distraught? If you're dancing on the tabletops, you kind of got to go with what your answer is. That's not happening, Kyle.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
Yeah.
And so it's just really one of those things where it's up to him. The world of sports is cruel and could change anybody. I was paranoid all the time, and you'd do something wrong and you think, oh, God, but like coaches, and Jerry Sloan was the king of it. You can't look behind you. You're a fighter pilot. You just keep kind of going. There's no behind you. And, their ADs are wired different, but not quite as different as coaches. And ADs have different ADs have a couple sports. So if we were good in basketball, bad in football, I could, at least have some sense of sanity. But you take guys like Jerry Sloan, who are I'm a Jerry Sloan fan, and Kyle same, and they're just tough, smart guys, and it's killing them. You know how tough both those two guys are. You wouldn't want to mess with them. And you can imagine they go home and, I used to say to, coach goes to sleep at 4 in the morning, the AD goes to sleep at 1:30, and the retired guy goes to sleep at 11 after the game. It's just the way it is. And it's really hard. So, I just don't want to do any kind of hypothetical of what's going to happen because he's earned too much respect.
I agree with you. All right, before we catch a break, Dr. Hill, and if you do not want to talk about this, it is well within your right to say into that microphone, buzz off. I have nothing to say. However, when a few friends of mine who listen to the program heard me tease that you were going to be on the show today, they both sent me the same message, and essentially it said, penny first thoughts about what Mark Harlan decided to do after the Utah-BYU game. And just, for context, I was down on the sideline, so I saw Mark kind of go at the officials when the game was still going on, which struck me as odd. My experience with Mark is that he's been more or less a measured guy that's nice to me. I don't know him well personally, but I'm walking home across campus from the stadium after the game, and suddenly my phone is blowing up like I thought somebody had got in an accident. Like, what's going on? So I pull my cell phone out, and it was all the same. Did you hear what Mark Harlan just said? Did you hear what Mark Harlan just said? Somebody sends me the link on social. I watch it, and I went, oh, no. I thought he was in a lot of trouble. Brett Yormark, Northeast, sleeping with the fishes, Big 12 commissioner. Penny for his thoughts when he woke up and saw his cell phone, by the way.
Yeah.
So public reprimand, $40K fine, and I thought Mark, I was relieved for him. I thought he was going to be in more trouble. So got to ask the question, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was bound and determined when I left, and still am, that any kind of administrative things that happen, I'm not going to blink my eyes one way or the other.
Fair enough.
The last thing I do is I don't want to be seen as that old guy that's criticizing what goes on or not. I can complain about throwing a pass the wrong way or something.
Sure.
But no, I think for me, and I appreciate you letting me not go into that, because what I say, it's not going to be worthwhile to anything. So
Fair enough.
I don't know Mark very well. Anyway.
Yeah.
I haven't spent much time with him at all. So
Well, what you can comment on is, as the AD, after a hard-fought Utah-BYU football game, if you feel like you're on the wrong side of certain things, that's a different type of intense emotion, isn't it?
Oh, it is. And there are times when I was in the hallway after a game years ago, I don't forget it, is with Kyle. He didn't call a timeout, and the referee did, and it cost us essentially the game. And I'm in the tunnel and pretty upset and talking to the conference office. But in my job, maybe it started with Rick, but I always felt, I didn't want to be near the bench ever or during the sideline. But as the game was over, I'd zoom to the locker room. I started with Rick because I wanted to get, okay, Rick, don't go. Stop. It was almost like that was, I was moving my feet and trying to pick up a charge, and I kind of got in that habit with everybody.
Yeah.
Liz Abel would help me too, especially in football. So I was always I was upset at times, whatever. But when I got down to the locker room, I kind of felt my job was to say, Liz, what do I need to do? I ain't going on coach freaking out. That's kind of my thing. So
yeah.
That was the way I looked at it. But there were times I was obviously upset. Everybody is. And, you just got to just ride with what your own personality is.
Yeah. Okay. We'll catch a quick break. Richard Smith, Dr. Chris Hill, live in studio. We got one more big segment coming up next. We'll launch into the 5 o'clock hour after that. Don't forget the Craig Smith Coaches Show is tonight at 6. And then after that, it's Monday Night Football, the Harbaugh Bowl with the Ravens and the Chargers. So keep it here on ESPN 700. All right, we've got Dr. Chris Hill, former AD, up on the Hill, no pun intended there. Live in studio. Richard Smith, 40 years with the Jazz front office, live in studio as well. A lot of intellectual brain power and great experience in this little radio studio, so I appreciate your time here.
Okay.
No, what? 40 years in the league, Doctor? How long were you an administrator in college?
Forget. No, 31 years as the AD.
So a combined 71 years of life experience in sports, Smitty. That's not nothing. I'm just trying to pay you a compliment.
Experience doesn't mean intellect. All right? That doesn't mean I was smart for 31 years.
Oh, you did a pretty good job, Dr. Hill.
What's that? What's that? The famous John Wooden line? Don't mistake activity for achievement.
Right, you know? Fair enough. Yeah. One more question about Coach Witt. One more question about Utah football. Then we'll move on to some other things. Smitty referenced Coach Sloan deciding, and I believe the phrase that Smitty used was he didn't want to do the heavy lifting anymore. So on the college side of things, we've seen Nick Saban, Tony Bennett, and others, powerhouse coaches, Saban potentially the best of all time, walk away from the job that he loves. And now that he's in media, we know he walked away because he doesn't want anything to do with what the sport has become. Do you think there's any part of Kyle that looks at what the sport has become and doesn't want to deal with it?
Yeah. Well, ran in one day and says we couldn't give you a hamburger to somebody, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And seriously, couldn't do it.
No, I remember it was
a
bagel or a bagel with cream cheese. Yeah. Like that was how silly it was.
It's interesting because the guys, at least I think it's interesting, the guys that have in that age bracket, they kind of grew up as coaches because they wanted to coach.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden they started making money, But they got into coaching because they wanted to tell the defensive tackle, you got to do this, you got to move here. Scout, I always used to say there's two kinds of coaches when you go to some kind of convention. There's the guys in the corner talking about their out-of-bounds plays or their splits and they're getting in the napkin. And there's the other guys over there, because I used to tease Valvano, he was the first one, talking about their contracts with TV Guide and who they're sponsoring,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those guys, I think Saban probably was one of those guys, as much as he's big now and all this money and everything, and it's hard for that. It would be hard for me. It'd be hard for anybody that you couldn't really coach them up, and you're not in control. Oh, coach, I'm sorry, I'm leaving because I'm making this much more money there. Love you, care about you. And I understand the whole deal. I understand why they need to have the portal and all this, but I just hope that they get contracts for kids where if they leave, at least somebody's got to pay somebody.
Yeah.
Or something. The pros, they got a model. What are we shying away from? I call it now work study. It is. They work just like somebody working in a cafeteria. They work and they're employees. It's okay. And they get paid for what they do. If they do something valuable, they get paid. Now that's hard because the fourth string tackle isn't really. Scholarship is $40,000. Pretty good for an 18-year-old kid that's not playing.
Yeah.
So anyway, didn't mean to get off. But
No, it's good.
Right.
No, but
it's good. Go ahead, Smitty.
No, you hit the nail on the head. What's happening is that in college athletics now, from my perspective, is that the genie is out of the bottle, and nobody knows where it's going to go next week. It keeps changing. It keeps evolving. It keeps getting more out of hand. Less and less able to grab it and to try and figure out what to do with it is the way I see it. I mean, whether it's Nick Saban in football, whether it's Jay Wright at Villanova in NCAA basketball, two of the most accomplished coaches, in their respective sports, who both had a lot still in front of them, and they both, apparently just said, forget, I can't, I can't do it, and hey, Randy Ray did that up the road at Weber State. Great success up there, 16 years, winning, always in the hunt for a conference championship, and at the end, near the end of February, and and that thing came to him, and he had a couple of his players his last year came and said, hey, an agent is contacted us and wants us to leave this week, and all this kind of stuff to go overseas or whatever, and they end up staying. But he was saying, well, if that's what it's going on now, like I can't deal with that, And plus now, like he said to me, if I happen to get another Damian Lillard at Weber State,
it's done.
Right? I got him 1 year, and then he's he's going to UCLA.
If that's Smitty, can you keep him for a year?
No, that's
yeah.
true also, you know, the way it is now. So, it's just a whole different thing. And Chris is exactly right. The guys who are into it because they love the coaching and the X's and O's and the napkins and on the coffee table and all that kind of stuff. And now it's a whole different world and why guys are getting into it, from what I've seen in recent years, is a different rationale for getting into it. And it's not the same, and it's that road has diverged, you know. And as Yogi Berra said, you know, when I come to a fork in the road, I take it. Which way are you taking it?
That's from his book. I got the book. All the things he said. All the things I said, I never said.
No, that's right.
And every one of those stories, every one of those things has a little explanation. You go, that place is so crowded, nobody goes there anymore.
That's right.
They used to have to work in the off season. He was a maitre d'.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It got so crowded, the place became so popular, his guys didn't come.
Yeah.
So it got so crowded, nobody came anymore. And that was his explanation. But anyway, I
love it.
I do think, you know, we can't be whining about it being different and all this and that, but it is different. So your skills and what you grew up with and how you handle it is maybe not the job for you anymore. It's just different.
Yeah, and I think that and Kyle said that today. I think in the press he said some version of hey, the way it's changed now in recent years, you either adapt or you
right.
or you choose option B, whatever that is.
Yeah, my problem is that some coach, you know, Kyle, gets a player, develops him. You know, that was what made Kyle's program win in those great years. But now you know it's like, you know, in basketball, Rick used to take the guy out, you know, if he didn't hustle. Now the guy calls his uncle and says, "Okay, I'm supposed to play."
Mm-hmm.
It's like who's the guy? Practice? You talking about Allen
Iverson?
Yeah, and the kid's going, "Wait a minute, I didn't get back on defense, and Joey, I think Texas is going to take me."
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, how do you coach him up? Yeah, and in basketball, one of my big concerns is that college basketball is dropping, and you'll see Kansas game crowded and this game crowded, but the Utes aren't getting people. But it's not uncommon around the country. I mean, BYU and Utah State do well, but you kind of fall in love with kids if you're a fan. I've heard that from more people. I bought my tickets, and I'm watching Spence grow up as a sophomore and a junior. I can't wait to go back and see him. And in basketball, it's different because you can see him.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reality is you go over and look and see where their family is. So you kind of grow up thinking, oh, this is my team. These are my guys. I didn't know who was on the team this year.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like fans. I don't want to be too corny, but they kind of fall in love with guys like Andre Miller. I mean, hell, I
for
did.
sure.
And so you can't wait for oh, he lost some weight.
Yeah.
He's stronger this year. He can shoot better from the outside. Beep, all those things.
Yeah, it's the same. You develop a relationship from your perspective. You think you know who they are,
right.
and some it's just like running into Tom Hanks at the airport, and you run up to hey Tom, you think he's going to say hey Chris, how you doing, whatever, but it's always that feeling that you have with them. Now Jerry Seinfeld was doing a little bit a while ago about growing up a Mets fan and all the guys he used to root for, all their career and stuff, and now he says they change, players change all the time. I don't even know who's playing anymore, but now I figure all I'm doing now is really basically rooting for laundry, because I'm just rooting for whoever's wearing the Mets shirt, whatever that is. I'm rooting for that guy. I don't know who he is, but he's got my shirt on, so he must be one of my guys. But,
yeah, no, great Seinfeld bit. Let me ask you one more Utah football question, because I need to ask you point blank your opinion on exactly how we find ourselves here. And the hard thing about this topically, Dr. Hill, is I do feel like you can be as reductive as saying if Cameron was healthy, everything would be different. I honestly feel that way. But we're talking 7 straight L's and potentially 8. So on a scale of reductive, Cam got hurt, to holy smokes, how did we get here?
Well, I think losing becomes a habit too, and you lose your confidence. And our defense, I mean, God bless them, they're doing great, but at kind of the end of the game, they kind of have no confidence, and the team goes down and scores. I mean, they kick butt for the whole time, and all of a sudden something happens. So it snowballs. It's not like we're getting beat by 40 and you just call it a day. But the quarterback has obviously it's a quarterback game on offense. So Could they have better people back up? It's pretty hard. Quarterbacks are snotty-nosed, spoiled kids, and do they really want to sit on the bench and wait their turn? So it's worse than it's ever been. So I do think it's part that. I think it's part the fact that your mojo gets down a little bit, and all of a sudden it just snowballs. And, I don't want to get back to the other thing we we're just talking about, but, there were 9 guys on a team that played against BYU at one time. 9 guys.
Wild.
Yeah, so, it's not like they're passionate about the Utes because they also got Uncle Joe talking to them about another school. So when it starts to go south, especially in football, where you're hitting each other day, it's no fun. And we all know basketball's fun, right? It doesn't matter. But, football, it's a hard thing when it's cold out and you're hitting each other and you're starting to lose. So I think it's a snowball effect, and you can't outdo the fact that when you have a good quarterback, life changes.
Just out of pure curiosity, because I honestly don't know. I just remember after the Rose Bowls, the back-to-back Rose Bowls, Fox 13 did a really good piece on what that meant for the athletic department, what it meant for the University of Utah, how much free advertising, how much free exposure it allowed for the institution, and therefore out-of-state enrollees were up as well. During a year where you don't make a bowl game, what sort of administrative consequences, if any, are there, since they're not going bowling this year?
Well, the bowls you don't make money on, but you got to believe that people are saying, well, do I really want to big one tickets? Am I going to donate as much this year? People start to get soft. So you worry financially, and you worry about the image with being able to recruit new kids. And, losing is, it's brutal. There's no way around it. And winning is off the chart the other way.
Yep.
So, they're not selling T-shirts, I'll tell you that right now. So every little thing along the way hurts you financially. And, we've talked about Greg a lot in Marston, and he's a dear friend and whatever. But he said whenever we won in football, we go to national championship games, and they think we were one fantastic athletic department. If we weren't, they'd say, now, you guys in Logan or Salt Lake City or Provo?
Yeah.
And you bristle at that stuff. It's even bigger now. So, it's why football coaches get paid a lot. Man, it changes the whole deal.
Yeah. Most states, they're the highest paid public employees. In my home state, Connecticut, it's the basketball coach because UConn's a basketball school. But, Smitty, let me go to you on this. So we're nearing the end of football season. So Friday's the final game for the Utes. And after that's kind of behind us, we'll lean a little bit more into our Utah men's basketball coverage. For our listeners out there that aren't acutely aware of how ridiculous the Big 12 is in men's basketball, put a little context on what Craig and his group are up against coming up this year as a new member of the Big 12.
Well, the Big 12 in recent years has been considered by most so-called experts or those who weigh in anyway as the toughest men's college basketball conference in the country, tougher than the ACC, tougher than the Big Ten, tougher than the SEC, and the Utes are going to have a hard time because, in part, I think first of all, I don't know what kind of favors they're doing themselves with the preseason schedule that they have this year. They play one team, from my point of view, one team of any note before the conference season. That's when they play St. Mary's in a few weeks. Otherwise, they're playing all these schools that are the Sisters of the Poor and whatever. And I get it. I know what the end game is. They're trying to go into the conference season, with a 10-1 record or an 11-2 record or whatever it's going to be, so that they look good when they get into the conference. But when you get to the conference, you're talking about Kansas. You're talking about Iowa State. You're talking about Houston. You're talking about Baylor. You're talking about Arizona. You're talking about an up-and-coming BYU team that has a couple of really good NBA prospects on the team. You're talking about Texas Tech. You're talking about a solid Colorado team. You're talking about West Virginia.
Cincinnati's in the top 20.
It's
ridiculous.
So you're going down the list, and it's a long list, and it's going to be interesting to see. Now, you don't play everybody in the conference, right? The way it is in football. You play a certain number of teams and a certain number of home games and road games, and so you don't play everybody. So sometimes you can escape, and avoid playing a few big boys along the way. But it's going to be a very interesting season. It's going to be fun to see some of those teams that do come in They're coming to the Huntsman Center this year to play, whether it's Kansas or whether it's Baylor. Some of these, really BYU is going to be a big game because they're very good, and these are going to be tough games. And I imagine the fans will show up. But Chris, I think, unfortunately, at this moment in time for Craig Smith, who's trying to build his program in his fourth year, fans are going to be showing up to these conference games this year to see the other team.
Yeah. I think you're right on the mark.
They're not coming to see the Utes, unfortunately, because I've been to some of the Ute games already, and as Frank Layden would often say, the game was just a rumor. Because there were like 200 or 300 people there, whatever.
We went to the game together with Frank and Smitty. My first game I went to on Saturday, and Frank is Frank. He's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
But,
he's the best, yeah.
It's interesting dynamic because now, it's like the Big Ten a little bit. You don't have to have you have to have some marks in your fall season. It's real important in this. And, you need 4 or 5 to make a mark. And then you have nothing to lose on them. You go 3-2 against some top teams. Even if you have to go to tournaments to play them, you're seeing Duke play Kentucky, right? Or Duke plays Arizona or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, neither team has anything to lose.
Yeah.
They really don't. And I know how that works. And it's kind of the formula. You got to make sure you have enough wins in non-conference against a few good teams. But if you finish in the middle of the Pac-12 and you got 3 or 4 tough wins in the non-conference, you're in. You're in and maybe got a decent seed.
Yeah.
They'll get 8 teams in at least.
Yeah, it's quite a challenge, and Craig is very front-facing about it and optimistic and believes they'll get there. They were picked to finish last in the conference, but let me follow up, Dr. Hill, on a question that we've discussed before. And if there was an easy answer, you just do it and you solve the thing. But as you know, I was a student at Utah in the late 90s. We planned our weeks around basketball games. And it was always jam-packed, and it was so fun. Yes. And whenever I go up to the Huntsman now, I'm like, what happened? It feels like you're in some fever dream.
Yeah, it's hard. I think when we, obviously when Rick left, it was, not only we were winning, we also had a guy in the sidelines and people came to watch him.
Yes.
They really did.
Yeah.
And, we had a couple NCAA tournament. Larry went to the Sweet 16 and we started to creep up a little bit with attendance. So you got to win. But I mentioned earlier, I'm worried about college basketball.
Yeah.
I really am. I mean, we have a lot of people like basketball, but Utah State's been winning like crazy. BYU's different. I mean, they always have great attendance, even on some down years. But, now with the new coach and the players they're getting and all that stuff. So, it's a shocker, when you go in there now and you think those that are around in the 90s were like, we played 10 o'clock games.
Oh, I remember.
And they were packed.
Yes, I remember.
10 o'clock.
Yeah,
now you play a 7:30 game, you're going, oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Yeah.
Well, I would tell people this, a good time to start a game is when your team's great. It doesn't matter. What's a good seat in the house? When your team wins. That's it. All the seats are good when you win.
Yeah.
None are good. The hot dogs are cold. Everything's bad when you lose.
Right.
So until they can win significantly, I think it's going to be tough coming back. But a lot of schools are in that now. It's sad to say.
All right, Smitty, before we take our break and I let you guys go, we probably should talk about some jazz since that's why we have you here more often than not. So I'll say this. Over the past 7 or 8 games, offensively, they've been a lot better. Their offensive rating over the past 8 games is like number 7 in the NBA. Now, they do not guard anybody. Knocked down a bunch of shots against the Knicks. But they have been better offensively. I'll give them that. Anything standing out to you over the past 7, 8 games?
Yeah, well, they made some shots in a few games, okay? John Collins playing at the 5 has helped, I think, somewhat. They get a little bit, he's playing very efficiently to this point. Do you realize they've played, John Collins has played in all 16 games the Jazz have played so far. Do you realize John Collins has missed 1 free throw?
Well, that's impressive.
He's 47 for 48 from the free throw line.
That's impressive. Yeah, that's impressive.
But he's playing efficiently at the 5 spot. They still turn the ball over too much. They're still too loose with it. Their transition defense, their man-to-man defense is really bad. They're still bottom 5 in all the statistical categories. That hasn't improved. It looks like they're trying to play some different guys, some different lineups. just to get something going. They played very well against the Knicks. Hey, I was impressed with the fact that they had a 20-point lead early in the third quarter. The Knicks went on a 17-0 run, 19-point lead, got it down to 2, and I thought, well, they're just going to keep it rolling. And the Jazz turned around and came right back with a run of their own and bumped it back up to 12-14 and ended up being able to close the game out. That was a good game for them. Now they're going to have an interesting stretch here. They play 4 games in the next 6 days starting tomorrow night. Spence, very interesting in the NBA schedule. They play 2 back-to-back sets at home, which is very unusual. Mm-hmm. They play Tuesday night, Wednesday night, then they get 2 days off for Thanksgiving. Then they play Saturday night, Sunday night. All 4 of those games are at home at the Delta Center. And then in the month of December, with the NBA Cup thing, that you got a couple flex games that they're going to haven't assigned yet, but they're going to end up basically playing 8 of 9 games on the road during the bulk part of December. And so that's going to be a tough stretch for them. So they're going to find out a lot about who they are, during the stretch once they get to the Christmas holidays, and what the rotations are going to be and what the younger guys are doing within the lineup. Cody Williams hasn't shown up at all yet.
They just call him down to the G League, by the way.
Yeah, well, they should.
Yeah.
Well, we had this discussion the other day with someone, saying that really I think it was on our show last week with Bowler, mm-hmm. when he mentioned the fact that we have the G League team, which is a developmental team. Well, most of the Jazz guys who are playing now should be on the G League team.
Yeah.
That's what the G League is for. That's where those guys are supposed to be. 20-year-old guys, 21-year-old guys, 1 year in college. Here they come, not ready to play in the NBA, but they're force feeding them at the NBA. Okay, I get it. I understand the whys of it, but it's not. I'm not sure how much it's helping them, because they're getting their heads knocked around most nights, and they should really be in the G League setting where they can get better run, more extended run, and be able to get some level of success and taste that a little bit to see what it is at the pro level. That's that's going to be an interesting time between now and the Christmas holidays in the Jazz schedule.
Well, look, gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thanks so much, live in studio. Have a great Thanksgiving. Love to do it again, okay?
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's comfortable with you here, and I can say some things I want to say. That
I love it.
To be able to say.
I love it. Dr. Chris Hill, Richard Smith, great to see you, my friend.
Spence, thanks, man. Happy Thanksgiving to you and everybody out there.
There we go. All right,
Safe travels.
Before we catch a break, we welcome in Ryan from the Dish Professionals, affordable options for wireless, internet, and cable television. What's going on, Ryan?
We love to save people money, and our most favorite thing is when we get the customers that are pessimistic about it, and they finally like, okay, well, what can you do? And guys, we blow people's doors off. There is such good deals right now, and the offer with Dish is really just as good as it's ever been with this Netflix offer, which we can add to the Dish system, which is a channel. Basically, it's built in. Guys, you get 2 years of credits. This is just money in your pocket. 2 years of credits. Price is guaranteed not to change. You get Netflix free for 2 years. We'll have you install, get you the biggest DVR out there, the auto hops commercials. It's simple and easy. Call us up and take advantage of the deal. And if you're not interested in Netflix, ask about the $200 gift card offer. We can help you with that and get you installed as early as next day. Plus, internet solutions, tons of internet options out there. And guys, I'll tell you, if you've got fiber, you saw that price increase, call us up and see what other options are out there, or possibly even you can change who you pay your bill to, still use the same fiber and pay 20% less. It's just really that easy. And it almost the exact same thing on the wireless side. Guys, as Boost is building out this 5G network, it is the most advanced, fastest 5G network in the nation. And the best part about it is while they're building it out, they're piggybacking off the biggest wireless provider in the nation's towers. You probably know who they are. That begins with the first letter in the alphabet. But here's the thing. You could probably spend, I don't know, a couple, $200, $300, $400 less the first year just by making a switch and use the same cell towers, plus get a brand new iPhone 16 Pro or Samsung S24 free, no trade-in, and it's really not that difficult. You call us up, we port your number over, send you a new phone, it shows up, you're dialed up, and you pay a lot less money with just one simple phone call, plus you got all the new equipment. Simple and easy. Call us today. We'll throw in dinner at JCW's. Take advantage of it. This is money in your pocket if you pick up the phone and call us today. 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Professionals. 5 o'clock hour of the program is next, right here on ESPN 700. All right, what's going on? Drive at 5 time. Your commute home on this Monday afternoon / evening starts right now, and it's brought to you by LHM Ford. Larry H. Miller and Draper, the Ford King, Utah's #1 volume Ford dealer, and they'll beat any trade-in price in town by $750 anytime, any day. Find them online at LHMFordDraper.com. Steve Young in about, we'll call that 22 minutes from right now. Prior to the Craig Smith Coaches Show, we'll catch up with one of the best quarterbacks in the history of football, period, whether collegiate or pro, where he won a number of Super Bowls and obviously one of the most efficient quarterbacks of all time. So we'll get Steve's thoughts on the 2-game skid that BYU finds itself in the midst of after starting the season 9-0. 2 losses now, 1 to Kansas. 17-13, that one is going to stick in the craw. 13 points at home, I think, is the one they're going to look back on. Arizona State's really good, and they are now in the driver's seats playing the Big 12 championship game. You know, we've been talking about this all day. Both Utah and BYU with pretty valiant comebacks over the weekend. Both those games fell short. Utah football mired in a 7-game losing streak. Nobody saw this coming. I don't care what the revisionist historians say. Nobody saw this coming. Utah heads to Orlando coming up on Friday. It's a short week. They're taking on one of the best offenses in the Big 12, even though UCF has not necessarily performed the way consistently most people thought that they would. They're still one of the most potent offenses in the entire country. Utah finds themselves as a double-digit underdog. On Friday night, 10 points is now the line. That's moved the way of UCF a couple of different times. And if Utah loses coming up on Friday night, that's 8 straight L's, and that would be the most losses consecutively ever suffered by a Utah football team. So there's not a ton to play for. Bowl game now off the table. Utah football will not even go to a bowl game, which is hard to wrap your mind around. But I was talking about this earlier, crosstalk with Sean. You know, if you watch some of the Utah players and coaches post-game after some of these losses, your hearts just break for them, man. Like Junior Tafuna, that poor kid, every time they throw him up on the dais after a loss, he just can't contain himself. He just gets emotional. We saw Connor O'Toole getting emotional. So it's a little corny for me to say what I'm about to say, but this is the last week that this group will ever play together and, quite frankly, will ever be together. You know, you guys know the deal. If you were with a team or even if you graduated from high school or college or were in a fraternity or whatever, like that last moment when you are with your class or your team, you don't really realize that you won't see some of those people ever again for the rest of your lives. You will never be together in that same group, in that same room. So I suppose there's that. You know, to hear Connor and Junior talk post-game with tears running down their cheeks about how much it means to them to play football with our brothers, this is the final time that will happen. And it's the final time this group will ever be together. Yes, that's not what we thought the narrative would be or topically what we'd be discussing, the week of Thanksgiving for Utah football, a team that was picked by Vegas to win the Big 12 championship, a team that was picked by the media. What do we know to win the Big 12 championship? And now we find ourselves in the spot watching this team week in and week out, not necessarily get blown out, but I'm not here for that. I'm not here for the moral victories. You got to win at the end of the day, and it's been 7 straight L's in a tough game coming up at UCF in Orlando. I will say, and I know this is hard to do because there's so many people in the community that are so bummed out about where we find ourselves now with Utah football. In a vacuum, I thought Saturday night was fun. Like, it was a great atmosphere. It was a great college football game. Luke Batari, the 5th option for Coach Witt, and Mike Bajakian is now your starting quarterback coming up against UCF. Isaac Wilson lost for the year. That was a dirty play. I'm not necessarily one to call these things out the way a lot of people online just want to live to be angry, but that was an alligator roll. And Coach Witt, for his media earlier today, and if you missed that, it's up at ESPN700sports.com, did confirm that it was the rollover that caused the injury to Isaac, so he's now out for the year. Sam Heward, obviously Brandon Rose, Cam Rising. So once again, Luke Batari, your 5th stringer, is going to be your starter coming up against UCF. After Luke came in and I thought did a really, really good job, provided a little bit of a spark, didn't he, with that 40-yard rush and a couple of nice completions. Obviously, the intentional grounding got a lot of attention, but that was the right call, and I'm sure Luke would like that one back because ultimately it pushed him back, and Cole didn't necessarily, he didn't leave it short. Cole Becker had the leg. He just pushed it. He just pushed it right. And, the air went out of the building. Senior night, they're honoring Ty Jordan, Aaron Lowe. There is part of me that's always kind of had this thought in the back of my mind with Ty Jordan potentially being a senior this year, what that would have looked like. But, can't exist in that space. Some cool moments having his family on the field and honoring them that way. So Utah football will close up the season coming up on Friday in Orlando. That's going to be a 6 o'clock start time. The TV will be on Fox. TV coverage will be on Fox. And as far as the radio side, of course, we'll have you covered. Porter will get rolling at about 2 o'clock on Saturday for the pregame coverage on Friday, 2 o'clock on Friday for some pregame. It is a short week for Utah football as they travel to Orlando to take on UCF. Now, on the BYU side of things, BYU is one of those teams this past weekend, along with Colorado, along with Alabama, along with Ole Miss. Good teams in the driver's seat. You just handle your business, and you are in with an opportunity to win a Big 12 championship game. And now, unfortunately, the past 2 weeks, after starting 9-0, and at some point, we have to be honest here. At some point, they were going to get got. At some point, all of the opportunistic, advantageous bounces were not going to go their way, and a couple of them didn't against Arizona State down in Tempe. And at some point, Jake's mistakes were going to come back to bite them. He has 4 games of multiple interceptions, and that pick he threw down the stretch against ASU, even though he was brilliant in the second half to bring them back, and even though for the most part he has been brilliant all year long, we saw Jake play last year, and the thing was you could see the talent and the potential. It was just decisions. It was decision-making from the quarterback position. And they have been able to survive what I perceive to be still the issue with Jake, and that is just you got to clean it up a little bit. There are several plays throughout the course of this year where I feel like BYU has been able to survive his mistakes and make up for them with special teams touchdowns or defensive, havoc plays. But the past couple of weeks, they've not been able to survive his mistakes. So the scenario now for BYU is pretty simple. Unfortunately, they no longer only control their own destiny. They are a healthy favorite. At this point, the line is 13.5 over Houston coming up in Provo on Saturday night. It's going to be a late kick. Looks like that's going to be about 8:15. But they also need either Arizona State or Iowa State to lose. Iowa State closes out with K-State at home, and Arizona State does have a rivalry game against Arizona on the road. So BYU at one point, it looked like it was going to be BYU in Colorado, and part of me was pulling for that because I thought it would be a lot of fun to see that. Iowa State is a slight favorite at home over K-State to get that win as of right now. K-State's a good football team, though, so we'll kind of see how that plays out. And then anything can happen, as we know here in our market, when two rivals go toe-to-toe. Arizona got Arizona State a year ago. It's a much different team at this point. Arizona State, even though they are the road team, they're a 9.5-point favorite. So Vegas is saying that the odds are BYU will not get the help they need with either Arizona State or Iowa State losing, but it's college football, and every weekend chaos ensues. And pro football this weekend, chaos ensued all over the place. Speaking of pro football, we are your home of the NFL in this market. So when we say goodnight at 6 o'clock after Steve Young joins us, we're going to turn it over to Bill and Craig Smith for the Craig Smith Coaches Show. Then when that's done, we will join Monday Night Football in real time. It is the Harbaugh Bowl with the Chargers and the Ravens doing battle. All right, before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Advanced Window Products, the #1 rated window company in Utah. Locally owned, the sales and installation are an in-house, so no middleman markup. This is Nate Orchard, mayor of Sac Lake City, Jake Weber, just great dudes, good people. When you choose a business, choose these people. You've got a lifetime warranty, which is transferable to a new homeowner should you be selling your home. So if you're in the market now for new windows, you should call right away at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. But if you anticipate being in the market for windows soon, call today and get on the schedule because you're going to lock in a savings of $2,500 when you purchase 10 windows or more. So beat the rush. Order today from the factory right to your front door in 8 weeks or less. Here's the number. It's 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or online at advancedwindows.com. All right, Steve Young, the great Steve Young is our guest. Coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Is this the song Michael Scott tried to karaoke to at Jim's party he wasn't invited to and made it awkward? I feel like there's an Office tie to this song.
There is a couple Office ties to Kenny Rogers for sure.
Uh-huh.
You might be right on that one. You know, they do the book signing thing too.
Yeah, that's one of the more. I'm a fan of awkward humor. I know some people that cannot watch The Office, like Scott's Tots.
Oh,
Dinner Party. Dinner Party's rough, bro.
It's a unique comedy where it is like some of it you'd really have to understand the characters, the relationships, the whole tie-in. But man, it is awkward, and it's as awkward as it gets on television.
Good luck paying for my TV with your $0 a year salary, babe. When she breaks his plasma TV.
With his Dundee.
The 4-inch TV. I love it when he pushes it against the wall. He's like, it comes with a cool feature, and he just like pushes it back against the wall.
That's a top 5 episode for sure.
It is hilarious. You got a little Nard Dog in there, which of course is always a good thing. All right, real quick. You know, I do not watch a lot of MLS. I only watch RSL. I was struck, though, over the weekend because after some of the games were wrapped up, I noticed that the Western Conference semifinal between LAFC and Seattle was on television. LAFC, of course, Los Angeles Soccer Club. It was in LA. And every time LAFC had a corner kick, the cameraman would pan over and be like, well, there's Colin Hanks again trying to motivate everybody to stand up for the corner. I'm like, you're in L.A. and the dude you got to tell people to stand up was Colin Hanks? Like, that's the biggest celebrity available, Colin Hanks.
Who is that?
It's Tom's kid.
Not even. I guess he's the. So Tom has 2 kids. Colin has gone into acting. His other kid is like kind of an influencer weirdo guy. Yeah, you could do better probably.
What has Colin Hanks done? I don't even know. And by the way, it'd be one thing if it was like, all right, well, cool, Colin Hanks is here, and just show him real quick.
But no, that's your guy. That's the guy.
That's the guy that was like motivating fans to stand up for corner kicks. It was Colin Hanks. So I guess that tells you where MLS is at this point.
Stars are out.
He was in That Thing You Do, which of course was produced by his dad. And Porter, why don't you remind the folks our stance on Nepo babies here on the program?
Don't like them.
No, can't win with them. All right. Okay. I'm out.
Adios.
I didn't tell you this prior to, but I've had it. That's enough. You will not hear me speaking into this microphone ever again. Or until next Monday.
Where are you headed?
I'm going home for the holiday, man. My son is living back east. My family, of course, is back there. So coming up tomorrow and on Wednesday, it will be Porter and our guy Tony Parks, filling in for both Tuesday and Wednesday's show. We're off Thursday and Friday. Then I will be back on Monday. So, Porter, before we get out of here, what should our listeners know about your Tuesday show?
Yeah, you mentioned it. Tony Parks and I will be in studio. Tim McMahon will stop by for the NBA Daily Assist. We'll give you a Big 12 power poll on a Tuesday. Kevin Reynolds of the Tribune will give us the latest on BYU and their Big 12 title chase. I invited Dave Fox in. You're not going to be here, so he's probably not going to even acknowledge it.
Are you serious? See. Is that how he rolls?
We'll see. We'll see if he's listening tonight. If he's listening tonight and he heard this, he's going to get offended and he'll text me back immediately. If not, I'll probably hear from him next week.
I'll give him some guff tonight.
Don't do it.
Okay, I will not.
Oh, see?
Okay, fair enough.
This is a test for Dave Fox.
All right. And is that it for Tuesday's show?
For now.
All right. No, that's fun. So make sure to give Porter and Tony your ears, and I'll talk to you guys 1 week from today. So we will say goodnight. Special thank you to Steve Young, Tom Haberstroh, Richard Smith, and Dr. Chris Hill. For any of the sound you may have missed from the show, head on over to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. It's the ESPN 700 app, which is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store as well. Finally, for what we do in our space for 4 hours every afternoon, check out our podcast page, which is called The Drive with Spence Checketts, and that's available wherever you get your shows. Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, we're there. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, give us a good rating, and you will be eternally blessed. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Thanksgiving week, guys. I just want to say I'm grateful for all of you. If you listen to this show, man, it means the world to us. So be good to yourself, be good to each other. Porter, Tony, tomorrow, Wednesday, I'll talk to you next Monday. Catch all the action, as always, right here on ESPN 700.